I think he's the one that developed the purple company. Who developed that? I can't remember his name. You want us to give him that before? Okay.
But
Now, if I'd done you like that, you'd have been saying, "Oh, you trying to shoot me."
That's good. All right, everybody, we'll come to order. We'll have our invocation and pledge by Commissioner Ford.
Lord, we come to this day, we ask that you have your hand upon us tonight as we take on the county's business. We ask that you have your healing hand on the people that's affected by this pandemic we're in. And we also ask that you give guidance to this country at this time of need. It's the worst I've seen it, I think, in my lifetime, all that's going on. And we just ask you
Staff or commissioners, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I would like. And I'd like to do it right after Brandon and before Mr. Foreman. And also at the end, I would like to add suspending the garbage assessment for the year.
Any other additions or deletions?
Chairman, I have one that I would request to add, Cedar Spring Shores surplus lots. We have surplus those lots, and we have a proposal to the homeowners organization down there to donate those lots to the homeowners. And also, the resolution authorizing me as the county manager to sign the CARES Act for new streets in Lake County. And also, I have prepared an email to send to the Water Management District to support Lake City's efforts to receive grant funding for 47 extension projects.
Okay. Anything else? All right, I will now entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved as amended.
Motion by Commissioner Williams,
Second.
second by Commissioner Ford. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. First up is a presentation to the board by Mr. Donald Savoli.
Good evening, Commissioners. Actually, I'm Alan Paulin, Senior Vice President of Clinical and Community Services, filling in for Mr. Savoy. I apologize if you could not attend this evening. So Meridian was established in 1971 as North Central Florida's Community Behavioral Health Center. We provide a broad range of individuals with services and meet community needs through mental health services, substance abuse. Adults and children receive many services through outreach and prevention, intervention and education, therapy, residential services, acute inpatient, crisis stabilization, long-term care, especially programs for child abuse to reunify children at risk with their families. And also we try to divert people in the criminal justice system who have significant mental health and substance abuse issues. Our mission on the next page is to promote the health, recovery, and well-being of those affected by mental illnesses and substance use disorders through prevention, coordinated treatment, and supportive services. And our vision is that hope, recovery, and wellness are within everyone's reach. We have always been conscious of how people access our services to make it as easy as possible to help with that barrier, because it's difficult enough with the stigma with mental health to reach out for services. So we've always worked on having a centralized location for that, and also through our outreach at the schools, engaging parents and out doing home visits. With the COVID coming on, we have been providing approximately 30 virtual services per day, and we ramped that up to over 400 to meet the need. So fortunately, we had a foundation for the virtual services for people who had barriers coming to get us when there were a lot of unknowns with COVID. So that was we wanted to point that out, and we're going to be continuing. We did not have to shut down any of our services except our one vocational rehab for a short time, and they're opening back up. And that was mainly due to protocols and social distancing that were put out. We do have same and next day services for Columbia County residents. We have a psychiatrist here at least weekly to be available in person. And we also have our mobile response teams that are available to respond to any crisis in Columbia County within 1 hour. And that's done through our access center. And they have been busy through all our counties. We do not serve Alachua County with that service, but they've been very busy. On the next page, I'm not going to run through those, but you can see the demographics that were set up with the pie charts and the graphs of the demographic breakdown of who we serve. Our service depth or client volume for the first 3 quarters of this year is up 4% from last year for Columbia County residents. The largest increase that we did have was with youth, and we saw an increase of 24%. And these are compared to the last 2 years data at the same point in time on the calendar year. Penetration rates are about, for the general population, you're looking around 4 or 5% for people who actually access services. When you start talking about that level of the people who are living at or below the poverty level, it goes up to around 15%. This year we did have a higher than average penetration rate, which could be seen as a good thing or a bad thing, but people are reaching out, and that was around 20% serving Columbia County. So of that population who are poverty, that's the percentage that was of our overall provision of services accessed. So on the next page, it's just a quick, we have a total of serving 3,201 residents for this fiscal year in 2019. The breakdown for adults, we have seen just over 2,000 adults, and children, we've seen 915 children. And again, that was an increase from last year, 24%. 119 of those accessed our crisis stabilization unit, which is our acute care. And then you can see the further breakdown on what type of services those children and families receive. Wanted to point out, we do have a Children's Community Action Team that works intensely with children who are at risk of further access into care. They're in and out of our crisis stabilization unit. There may be child welfare, a risk of child welfare involvement. And what this team does, the team consists of a nurse, access to a psychiatrist. We have case managers, mentors, and therapists that go out to the home and basically envelop that family with services. And that has very good outcomes to keep the families intact. And we serve 66 families this year for Columbia County. Among adults, depression is the most prevalent at 37% of those seen. Substance use disorders are the second most prevalent, affecting 28%. And generally, you have more than one issue when people are coming in for services. Trauma, we know, really impacts you. People who have experienced trauma, especially at a young age or for an extended period of time, or have gone through something very difficult, it really can really impact their daily functioning, their overall mental health, and ability to be independent. So we do have a high percentage of people coming to us who have experienced significant trauma. I won't read through the two examples, but there's two adolescents that were really struggling. One, even to the point where she was in and out of the crisis stabilization unit. She was able to connect with her therapist, work on some coping skills, and she's back on track. She's doing very well in school, and she has her sights set for college. So that is a really nice success story. One example on a personal level of what services can do for someone who is in need. So among the children, behavior problems and attention deficit are the most prevalent, affecting just about 40% of those we help. Depression is the second most frequent at 28%, and adjustment problems follow closely, affecting 25%. 29% of the children have more than one issue being addressed. And as the adults, there's also a high percentage of trauma that they've gone through. Some kind of loss in the family, any type of abuse, and often it's sustained until we can uncover that and we get in there to help them. Because when you have that trauma, as you go through your life, it can impact you in different ways. One of the most prevalent is substance abuse. As far as the overall benefit, we do take quite a few surveys. The state has the state surveys. Our patient experience, you can see those numbers. They're all in the 90s. As far as, was treatment helpful? Did we truly care? Have I become more independent? And would I return to Meridian or recommend to others? Any questions so far, commissioners? So as far as the funding goes, so that is really an overview of our annual report. There's some more information that I didn't cover just for time, though just wanted to relay the information. We do accept a wide range of payers, ensuring that governmental funds are the payer of last resort. Those are the criteria for us to be able to receive those dollars. Like I had mentioned, the majority of who we see from Columbia County are at or below federal poverty guidelines. And when people do come in for insurance, often the services that they require, the insurance does not cover, or it has such a high copay, it's difficult for them to cover that. So the ask today, commissioners, as far as the local match, there is, Florida statute for counties to supply a match. Our overall for our entire agency is close to $3,750,000. As far as Columbia, you guys are right around 13% of the population of our core service area. Last year, the county was able to provide to us graciously $240,528. This year, we are putting in a request for a 2.1% increase to account for inflation, increased demand for services in the county, and to move closer to the total match that's required, which is also listed on that page. And that would bring it to $245,579.
Go ahead.
First of all, we appreciate what Meridian does for Columbia County as far as our mental health goes. There's a star out there providing that mental health care. And I realize that everything goes up. You can't do the next year on what you've done this year, but as you know, we're somewhere as of now between $1 and $2 million deficit due to the coronavirus. So we don't know exactly what we can do and can't do. Ben is, or have already started the budget process. He started that months ago. So we'll be looking at it and tackling and see what we can do. But if you don't get it, you'll know why. We got to show up everything that we don't have any control over and fund it and then go from there, as sense speaking.
Yes, sir. I
I just want you to know how much we appreciate what Meridian does for this county.
Well, thank you very much for that, and we appreciate what you guys do. We do understand these are very unusual times, very uncertain times. Whatever you can do for us, we would appreciate it.
You mentioned something, kind of caught my attention, the 20-something% increase with, the children.
Yes, sir.
It's, what's the, background on that? Did y'all determine what the?
I would probably attribute that to, we're really ramping up and working closely with the schools to get in there, to have the access, engaging the families. The CAT teams, the child action teams have expanded. And we don't know if it's something where it was just, the services wasn't out there, or we're doing more outreach, where there are truly in need. It's really hard to pull that out, the actual cause, but we do know that, the pressures that the youth are under, especially with social media and everything else going on. And so we're trying to do everything we can to get out there for them with that outreach and bring the services to them. I would probably say if I had to pick one, that would be the reason.
Okay, thank you.
So your 2.1% equates to about $5,000?
It does have that. Yes, sir. It's from the 240 to the 245.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned that our allocated proportionate share is $582,794. Where does that number come from?
That will become from the formula that comes down from on the Florida statute for the state, for the county match for the dollars. And we know that's a big stretch, and we don't.
So we don't meet what the statute.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, and you're not alone in that category with our counties we serve, and we understand the pressures everybody's under year to year, even without this, and so we do the best we can with understanding, but it goes right directly into care for those dollars.
Did I understand you say, how many cases of COVID did y'all tend to this year?
We had, they were actually not COVID cases. Fortunately, we've had almost no clients that are reporting with that, and we've been very fortunate with the precautions that we've taken, no COVID cases in our residential facilities. But what had happened since COVID has started, a lot of people did not want to come in for various reasons. So we expanded our virtual services, basically our Zoom-like services. So instead of, we were still providing, there was a slight dip in services right when COVID hit, but we've been able to get back to our average amount of services, but a big portion of those now, instead of about 30 done virtually, about 400. So over tenfold.
What would you estimate your expense was to prepare for COVID?
As far as preparation, it was mainly, it was really a lot of administrative and managerial moves and policies to allow people to work from home and get their office set up from home. So it was a lot of on-the-ground person power, but also there are costs for the licenses. Unfortunately, we had worked on through the USDA and some other areas and had gotten grants for telehealth equipment. We knew that was the future, and we were headed there. This just ramped us up in a hurry.
So y'all did get some grant money for COVID?
We are looking at that. We've got nothing that's set, but we have a lot of things out there. We were able to get some things that was actually on the news for some equipment and tablets.
I would like for you to get with County Manager Ben Scott and prepare him a cost analysis of what you think it costs y'all to prepare for the COVID.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is our public hearings. Brandon, you're up.
Can you hear me? Good evening, Commissioners. Brandon Stokes, Community Development Coordinator for Columbia County. I have 5 items for you this evening. The first one is a comprehensive plan amendment, CPA 0233, ordinance 2020-05. It's a request by Carol Chadwick on behalf of 5 Points Pond LLC to amend the comprehensive plan, future land use map from residential low density to commercial for tax parcel 05432-000. This is in District 1, Mr. Ron Williams' district. And the Planning and Zoning Board held a public hearing on May 28th, 2020, and voted to recommend approval. If there's a map behind you, if you need to see a general location, but this is right on the corner of North US 441 and Meek Street. And if there's any questions of the commissioners, I'm here, and the applicant's agent is also in the audience.
I don't have any.
You okay with Ron?
No, I said I don't have any.
Okay, I now declare the public hearing open. Would anybody like to speak for or against this item? Not hearing any, I now declare the public hearing closed. What's the wishes of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move we take the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board on CPA 0233, ordinance number 2020-05.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Williams. I have a second by Commissioner Nash. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. That carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item you're probably very familiar with. This is Z0587. It's ordinance 2020-01. Excuse me, I've got to lose my voice today. It's a request by Linda Cruz, agent for Linda H. Cruz, Bradley Aaron Cruz, Matthew Cruz, and Cruz Family Trust to amend the zoning atlas from residential single family 1, RSF1, to commercial intensive, CI. And this is for tax parcel numbers 08868-001, 08868-011, 08870-000, 08868-002. This is in Mr. Tim Murphy's district. The Planning and Zoning Board held a public hearing on May 28th, 2020, and voted to recommend approval. Nobody spoke in opposition to this amendment. If the board remembers, this is the amendment that has already gone through the land use phase. So this is just adopting the zoning to comply with the land use. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Applicants in the audience as well.
Okay. I now declare the public hearing open. Anybody to speak for or against this measure? Not seeing any, I declare the public hearing closed. What's the wishes of the board?
I make a motion to accept Z0587 ordinance number 2020-01.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Murphy, second by Commissioner Ford. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
The next item I have for you is Z0588, ordinance 2020-03. Is a request by Lance Jones of Jones Engineering and Consulting LLC on behalf of Robert Adams. The owner of the property is to amend the land development regulations by amending the official zoning atlas from conservation to commercial neighborhood, or CN. This is for tax parcel 10063-000. To give you a little history on this, this is off of State Road 27, just before you get to the county line. In the Rivereye State Park, this parcel has been utilized for commercial since probably the 50s. But it kind of sits in there, wedged in there around the state park. And I think back when the zoning and land use maps were originally adopted, it kind of got overlooked because they didn't have parcel level data back in those days. So this is kind of correcting something that's been commercial, is utilized for commercial. There's a current car.
Little car lot.
Yes, sir. It's been there for a very, very long time. But in saying that, the Planning and Zoning Board did recommend approval. They have a public hearing on May 28, 2020, and nobody spoke in opposition to this amendment.
Okay, I now declare the public hearing open. Anybody to speak for or against this measure? Not hearing any, I declare the public hearing closed. This is in my district. I'm familiar with the property. I have reviewed this and I'm in favor of it, so I'll make the motion that we approve ordinance 2020-03.
Second.
Motion by me, second by Commissioner Williams. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
The next item for you this evening is Z0589. It's ordinance 2020-04. It's a general map amendment to the official zoning atlas. If you recall, I gave a presentation last month to this commission on this and was told to proceed. And so the Planning and Zoning Board did have a public hearing on this. No members of the public came and spoke. I've had nothing's changed from my presentation last time, and I'll leave that to the board's discretion.
Okay, I now declare the public hearing open. Anybody to speak for or against this measure? Okay, we'll step up to the microphone and give your name for the clerk, please, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is John Ward, W-A-R-R. I've been a landowner. All the way up to consists of who knows how many thousands of acres. It's currently zoned agricultural. Property owner to know what's going on. A multitude of regulations. For those of us who are affected, if you believe using usage maybe later in verbal assurances are just not enough. You are all businessmen. You know that. But to wish to appeal this, we'll have to furnish our. It appears to me that the county is making everything as difficult as possible.
Thank you, sir.
What question? Sure, he could answer your question for you.
I don't know enough to have, the other property owners, if they're made aware of this, will have a lot of questions. I think a lot of discussion needs to be made before this thing is.
Brandon, can you come up and explain what a zoning change actually does and doesn't do, and possibly put his concerns at rest?
I'd definitely love to address his concerns because, I understand. What he's referring to is before you, the map, is the brown area, which is ESA 2. It already is ESA 2. I know it's deceptive in the fact that the zoning says A3, but the commission back in 2009 adopted that area as ESA on the comprehensive plan, in the comprehensive plan and the future land use element. So when they did that on the future land use element and the map, that's been ESA since 2009. Nothing, this changes absolutely nothing about what's going to happen on his property, what he can use his property for, because it's been like that since 2009. So the correct answer is, was it going to change? Absolutely nothing, except the fact that, it's been this way since 2009. Now, I have no control over that. That's what was adopted. That is the Itchitonia Trace area. And it was part of a conservation preservation thing because of the sensitive nature of the Itchitonia Trace. And this was handed down to us from the state back then. And it was adopted by the commission. At this point, the only reason why we're doing this is because our maps, our zoning map has to comply with our future land use map. So our comprehensive plan, which is the base, and the future land use map is regulated by the state. And so we have to do certain things to meet state guidelines. And when 2009, when that was adopted, for whatever reason, the zoning map was never amended to reflect that adoption within the comprehensive plan. So all this time, our zoning atlas has been out of compliance with our comp plan. This is just to bring it into compliance with the state statutes, the local law, and the future land use map.
So basically,
I would be happy to sit down and meet with him next week and go through and answer anything that he wants answered. Obviously, about sending notice to every applicant, it would be impossible to, get every applicant that's within that area and send them a notice. It would, I wouldn't even know begin to how to do that, but.
so basically, this is a house cleaning effort
Correct.
to correct our maps, what the land actually is at this time.
Correct. Everything that we're doing here, and as I said in my presentation last month to the Board of County Commission, this is nothing but it brings the zoning atlas in compliance with our comprehensive plan. That is it. There's no special things on here. There's no zoning amendments that are to change anybody's rights or use. If it's zoned agriculture on our future land use map, it's going to be agriculture on our zoning. And it's the same way with ESA. We have to match our land use and zoning.
So
like
what?
I said, I would be happy to sit down and go through any questions that this gentleman has and answer them.
What does this restrict him from being able to do with his property that he can't do now?
Nothing, because his land use is already ESA 2, so he can't do anything outside of what's allowed within the ESA anyways, because the land use is already ESA 2. Like I said, that happened back in 2009, so that was 11 years ago.
So his agricultural use is allowed?
Agricultural uses are allowed. The thing about agricultural uses in the ESA is you cannot have intensive agriculture. So he couldn't do like a feedlot, or couldn't do probably like a large scale chicken egg, like Hillendales or something like that.
Like a
But-
CAFO or something.
Yeah, exactly. But outside of intensive agriculture, he can still do his agricultural activities, still have his cattle, whatever, still the same regulations on regular agricultural activities within the ESA as the ag zone district. The difference is the intensive ag.
And this was imposed on us by the state, is that correct?
Correct, back in 2000, well, the late 2000s, 2009 is when it was originally adopted in the comprehensive plan. And that was basically what was mapped out as the Chitoni Trace area was regulated as ESA.
So basically what we're doing tonight is just changing our zoning map to match what the property is actually zoned at this
It's
point.
already environmentally sensitive, it's just, we're going to be reflected on that, on the zoning map now. Any additional questions?
You have more questions, Mr. Moore?
I don't, but I think a lot of the other property owners might, because they don't know this. They've not been heard.
There is a second public hearing. There is, because of the type of amendment, there is a second public hearing.
And it will be advertised?
It will be advertised the same way, display ad, legal ad. So there will be a second, that's going to be July 16th of this. Yeah, July 16th commission meeting. So this is just the first reading right here.
Sir, where's your property at? What road are your property adjacent to?
It's off Hurlong.
Corner of Furlong and Kanger.
Okay, okay.
I'm right at the edge.
Mm-hmm. I know right where you at.
And certainly, like, I can meet with him and look up his property and see, but verify that is accurate.
Oh,
Brendan, is that all, have we identified, is this the last parcel of properties that this county or the state have designated environmental sensitive? Will this be the end of it now? Do we have all of it now in the
Yes, sir.
county?
Yes, sir. It was all done in 2009 on the comp plan map, the future land use map. And that, once this is done, that will be it unless this board changes it. So unless the board adds it on the future land use map, then it won't be added anymore to this.
And and it's most unlikely that the board would change it because any change has to be approved through the state on environmental sensitive properties.
It depends if it's over 10 acres, and yes, sir, it would. But I mean, there would be no reason for the board to change it, and the board could not change a single property without permission from the property owner itself. But the property owner would have to make that petition to change it from ag to ESA or whatever the land use is. So, like in 2009, the county was required to do this. But any future, there's no requirement that this county has to do any other areas as of this time. Now, that's not to say that the state couldn't come in and designate, go in there and say, we have other trace areas that we're going to have to designate, but I'm not aware of any other trace areas, because this includes what they call the Chitoni Trace, which is part of Clay Hole and all of Cannon Creek and all those others that empties out into the Chitoni Basin. So I'm not aware of any other trace areas in this county. The other next one I think over is in Swan.
All right, well, Brandon, I think there's a lot of confusion as to what a zoning change does and doesn't do. For my clarification, when you go from ag to ES to the ESA, it prevents the intensive ag.
Correct.
So the family farms that are there are free to be family farms, and long after this, free to be family farms, and this zoning change does not impact that at all.
That's correct.
So I think if his neighbors all understood that, that would put their fears at rest.
Yes, sir.
All right.
But
Thank you.
Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not doing a zoning change. We're just cleaning up the atlas.
Yeah, technically.
It's going to reflect as the.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a requirement. I mean, we're supposed
understand.
to have, this was supposed to have been done 11 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, and unfortunately, It wasn't, and we
Well,
when we did the future land use map after expanding the DUDA and got all that done, this is cleaning everything up so that both our maps, when you overlay them, they are consistent with one another.
So since there's a second public hearing required on this, we need to set that? Or,
Yeah, you'll need to adopt it on first reading and first public hearing and set the second public reading for July 16th.
okay, what's the wishes of the board? No. Come on.
Quick on your feet there, Stewie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's nice to be here tonight with my mask on. I hope all this stuff has been disinfected before the meeting. I respectfully, sir?
It was.
Thank you, thank you. I respectfully point out to this board that this is the second meeting in a row where you've heard about inadequate notice. I mean, 2 weeks in a row. Actually, you've heard the same thing 2 weeks in a row. That the newspaper advertisement wasn't adequate to notify the people in the area that this was going on. At the last meeting, you heard 4 or 5 people testify under the penalty of perjury. That means they could go to jail if they're caught lying. I mean, that's a big deal. That they didn't have notice and that the notice wasn't adequate. And while the county, for years, I mean, and Dale Williams, and everybody knows how smart Dale Williams has said time and time again, we just do what's required by the law. That does not inhibit this board, any one of you, from upping the ante and making these advertisements more specific so people know what's going on and notifying the people in the area. Mr. Stubbs said, I wouldn't have had to contact all those people in the area. Well, if Mr. Stubbs, where is he? Here he is. Would have called me, I could have told him. You folks that run in politics and get maps and send out letters can send any one of these outfits that do addresses a little map with all those areas in it, and these folks will give you the address labels for everybody in that area. Yeah, you're going to have to pay for them, but that's a lot of people. And to say, well, you're just changing the zoning and now you're going to have a second hearing, you know, I don't know how you're going to get in touch with all those people, but it's easy to do. It's not hard to do. It's easy to do it in a legal advertisement and give more specific information so that people know what's going on. And I do have one question about that because, you know, now the land use is restricted. You can't say it's not restricted because before this gentleman could do whatever he wanted to do and he may have wanted to do intensive agriculture. Now he can't. Once this goes into, and neither can anybody else up there. So to say that nothing's changed is really not true because everything has changed. And I respectfully, I beg this board to take another look at the way you do these notices so that people have adequate notice, everybody that's concerned, the adjacent property owners, and here there's a lot of adjacent property owners, so that they know what's going on and can make their feelings felt. And I'm done. And do what the Constitution allows them, Mr. Witt. I know this has meaning to you. Petition their government for a redress of grievance. That's the First Amendment, number 1. And all those folks so far in that area, except this gentleman, have been denied that because of inadequate notice. And that was the same thing that was done last week. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stu. Anybody else?
Yeah, my name's Terrence Walker, down Fort White. I understand Lake City Reporter is not widely distributed, but the county commission website posts these, correct? Any type of rezoning notifications, all those things are posted on the website?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. There should be a notification tab right on the county commission site for new updates to any type of zoning. So that all you have to do is load up the website once and you'll see that there's notifications for land use changes or any other public hearings that are going on. And that would be a simple thing for the IT folks to do. Been in IT for 30 years myself. It's a simple thing to do. And the people, we need to educate ourselves about the technology we have available. Papers are done. We need to be able to notify people electronically, and the residents need to be able to just take a simple look and see if there's notifications and be able to determine whether they've got a voice and whether they need to address it. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Good suggestion. Anybody else? Okay, what's the wishes of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I now declare the public hearing closed. Sorry, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, we got to have a second hearing on this to move this forward. I move that we approve zoning Z 05889, ordinance number 2020-04.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Williams, a second by Commissioner Murphy. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, that carries.
The final application I have before you is Z0590. It is ordinance 2020-06. It's a request by Carol Chadwick on behalf of 5 Points Pond. This is the rezoning to the comprehensive plan amendment this board just approved. It proposes to amend the zoning from residential single-family mobile home 2, RSF MH2, to commercial intensive CI for tax parcel 05432-000. This is in District 1, Mr. Ron Williams' district. Planning and Zoning Board held a public hearing on May 28, 2020, and recommended approval to this board, and no members of the public spoke in opposition to this amendment.
Okay, now declare the public hearing open. Anybody to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. What is the wishes of the board?
Mr. Chair, I move we adopt zoning 0590, orders number 2020-06, parcel ID number 20-3S-17-0543-2-000.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Williams, second by Commissioner Ford. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Brandon. Mr. Foreman.
So Joel would, yeah. Yeah, I'll soon as Joel gets up there.
Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Nash wanted to do a
Yes.
addition right now.
Well, I think it plays into what we've been talking about, even to the meeting about noticing. I know we put up signs, but I'm looking for the extra step where people get notified and different things, and whatever, when we talked this morning, whatever you come up with to help enhance that, I would like to change an ordinance or whatever we need to do that, because see, we move on from one problem, like we went through 3 hours of that last time, and I still don't know even if that was properly advertised, and I'm gonna ask for the zoning or whatever, the adjustment board to revisit whether that was advertised properly. And I just looking for suggestions, because we moved on from it with no clear direction of how we were gonna try to enhance our communication to the property owners and people watching in. You know, one person gave me a scenario, well, if I own a piece of property and I live in South Florida and that's when I'm gonna retire, I'm not gonna see a sign in Columbia County. And next thing I know, I've sold my home, move up on my property, and there's a duplex there, or there's something there. So that kind of opened my eyes to what can we do? And then you suggested, well, we'd have to charge a fee, but the person doing it charges a fee. So you want to take it from there?
Yes, sir. So understand that your planner has to follow the rules and land development regulations of Florida statute. And Florida statute, particularly with these zoning changes, is very specific and rigid with respect to how you give notice. Newspaper of general circulation, that's the Lake City Reporter. I think we all understand circulation is not anywhere near 100%, but that is the newspaper of general circulation. So when the planner's checking off his boxes for his processes that he has to go through to do things like land use changes, that's what he's satisfying. You are not precluded from adding things to that, right? And so one of the suggestions that was made as far back as the situation with the chicken farm several years ago under a previous board was, giving notice to adjoining property owners or giving notice to property owners who are directly across the street. That's something that could easily be achieved. The suggestion that Mr. Stubbs made that I think is very reasonable is have an affidavit where we require the applicant to say, I have provided certified notice to all the adjoining property owners. Here's copies of the letters and the certified mail stubs. That way they've paid for it. So it won't increase our cost. It won't increase our staff time. It'll just require an administrative step for the applicants to go through. I think that's something that can be accommodated. But as we talked about before at the last hearing, the land development regulations are your regulations. And if you want to change those, certainly coordinate with Mr. Stubbs so he understands the suggestion he made, I think is very smart. But coordinate with him, coordinate with me. We can get you some ordinances together. We can certainly bolster and change and amend your land development regulations. It's really just a policy decision of the board.
Well, you need another step in that too, because if you put it on the applicant, that doesn't help what we went through tonight, because we actually changed this one. We changed so we would be it'd be on the county to mail all those folks.
If you take that position, right? So we dealt with this years ago. What?
Come on.
Brandon, you got to speak in the mic. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to point out that the process for general amendments is different than site specific. So that, unless you specifically stated in the ordinance that you were going to apply that to a general map amendment, then it would not apply to that. So in other words, statutory requirements say we have to do X, Y, and Z. So if you wanted to include, like when you do big map amendments like that, and you want to notify every property owner that's going to be affected, then you specifically have to include that as something separate from the regular, site-specific amendments, the special exceptions, variances, and things like that, if that's where you wanted to go.
But I think sometimes though common sense prevails though. Like in that scenario there, you could probably put up, 5 or 6, 7 signs and cover, sparking interest. You don't have to mail out all those things. But when you go site specific, like you're talking about, that should be, the adjacent property owner.
Yeah.
I would like to
and
see the commissioner in that district notified too. Because a lot of things happen in my district and stuff like this here, I'm not even aware of it.
I send emails to all the commissioners. When we have the P and Z boards, I send those out to every commissioner. I send the notices out there. I send the notices out to every commissioner. So if for some reason you're not getting those, then let me know. I have to check, make sure that I have your email correctly. But I copy Ben, I copy Joel. He gets them too. And I make an itemized list of everything that's on the agenda, whose district it is, and what it's for. So if you're not getting those, please let me know so I can correct that. But like you were saying, Mr. Nash, the reason why the requirements for a general map amendment are different is because there is a map that's published in the paper in the general circulation area that has every area that's being changed highlighted on that map. So if you don't know, if you're looking at the map, you should be able to identify I'm in this area and it's being changed and I need to call. That's why there is a map included, and that's why it is a display ad and not a simple legal ad like the site-specific amendments are. So,
Mr. Chair. I agree with Mr. Nash. If we can improve the notification, let's let the county attorney and planner get together and bring back a recommendation to this board to see how we can enhance communication among our citizens with the owners in public hearings that have to be done.
Let's include IT in this too. Let them try to enhance the website a little bit to to point this out, like it was suggested.
And I put that on form of a motion that Mr. Nash talked about.
And before we go that far,
I got a motion.
okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does it need to be a motion?
I don't think it is.
On the line.
If it's the board's pleasure to do it by motion, that's fine. You'll just need to open up for discussion.
Well, a lot of time when I do by motion, a lot of time we sort of count on you to say, we want you to say by motion what you want us to do and not just.
No, I
So I
understand,
was
sir.
following your request.
No, I understand that
Yeah.
part, sir.
I was gonna fill out your little paper.
What's that?
I was gonna fill out your little
Yeah,
paper.
Commissioner Nash can fill out a request to have so what we usually do, Commissioner, is when a commissioner wants to sign on to something, he can fill out a request. We'll bring you back the work product, and then when y'all set the adoption hearing, that's when I need to get the
Okay.
motion. But if it's the pleasure of the board to do it by motion, I'm fine with that too.
I'm good with it.
Just you'll need to open up public comment on the motion before you take a vote.
Pleasure of the board.
You have a motion on the floor, sir.
We have a
Oh,
motion
did you
and a
make it?
second.
Okay, I didn't know if that was your motion or not. Okay, we did have a motion by Commissioner Williams.
Second.
We got a second by Commissioner Nash. Any more discussion?
What is?
Two? I just want to remind all the commissioners, because technology is a wonderful thing. I'm getting texts from people in the back saying they can't hear. I think the speakers are a problem and some of the commissioners. So if everybody would speak in the mic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You can't hear online. That's why I'm here tonight. And it's almost impossible to hear Commissioner Williams from right over there. Nothing new. I mean, the technology is people have microphones and they know how to use them now. But getting back to the situation at hand, you've now heard this, and I certainly am appreciative of the fact that the board is going to revisit notice. Of course, we still have this thing hanging in the wings from last week. However, you will recall those people that were here last week. Part of the problem was people could not see the sign. So no matter where you advertise it, if people don't see the advertisement, if they're interested and they drive past a piece of property and the sign is either stolen, could happen, somebody removes it because they want to have something done to a piece of property and they don't want their neighbors to know, probably something that happened last week, or for whatever reason, if you go to other counties and you look at the signs, they're on an iridescent orange background so people can see them. So that poster board, where is he? That Mr. Stubbs puts his notice on, which nobody could read unless you have like magnifying eyeballs, which certainly I don't have anymore. But if the sign was posted on one of those orange boards or green boards, like you see EMS workers and ambulance workers use, or Everett Shirt tonight, if you look at Everett Shirt, just a little brighter, people would notice the signs. The whole point of this is advising the public of dependency of issues before whatever board it is that they have the right to comment on. I would remind this board, because of a get-together of the Press Association, which is on the end of its rope, as somebody pointed out earlier, that newspapers, as we know them, are going down the tubes. That's why people read the Columbia County Observer. It's free, that's nice, and it's digital. But as that goes down the tubes, the Press Association and the Press Union and the newspapers got together and said, well, you know, these guys don't have any money, so we got to advertise these big little noses in the newspaper that nobody gets and that nobody can read, and that's not explained to even find the property, unless you're Mr. Stubbs, who knows all these things with the transit markings that people do. He just knows where everything is, as you heard last week. So I would ask the board to consider three things. Number one, if you're going to change the signs, put them on a backing so if people will stop and look at the sign, they can find it. And Mr. Nash knows, and all you guys know, that when they had that thing in, whatever it was, that one of the big complaints in this county has been over time is that people cannot see the notices. Clearly, you know that now. The other thing is it's nice that Mr. Stubbs said he sends emails to everybody. Clearly, it was brought out last week that Commissioner Ford didn't know anything about this project. And many times, projects go before commissioners and before boards, and they don't know what's going on. So the lines of communication have to be made clearer. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stu.
I do want to make a note that I did ask for the Board of Adjustments to address whether it's noticed. What do you mean what I do?
I can't hear what he's saying, Mr. Chairman. He's not speaking in mic.
Moving on.
So I don't understand what Mr. Nash said. Is Mr. Nash looking to reconsider something, or is Mr. Nash saying he wants to send a note to the Board of Adjustment to do something? Notes don't work. So you need to use the microphone, Mr. Nash, and I need to know what
In
you
my
just said.
comments in the beginning,
Yes, sir.
I asked for the Board of Adjustments to see if the property next to you was properly noticed. That was part of our motion.
So what
They
does
will-
that do? The clock is going for 30 days. You heard people testify last week that they didn't even know the notice. You heard Mr. Ford say that the notice was on the wrong piece of property. And I will tell you
Well,
straight
it's up for
out.
them to determine whether it was properly noticed. That's what I'm saying.
We're not going to rehash the
No,
public hearing
so-
last week. Now, I've allowed you some liberty here.
No,
but
so I'm
this
just
is out
trying
of
to.
order.
So part of the motion is that the Board of Adjustment's going to do what?
He has not made a motion, and I've allowed you to speak, but this is out of order.
Well, I'm just trying to understand what he said.
Well, y'all can get together after and
Well,
figure that
but the
out.
board has to understand what he said, and so does the public, because there's a lawsuit pending.
Why don't you honor the chair?
We're asking, I just said it. You
Oh,
said,
yeah.
we never, ever got to the bottom of whether your property was properly noticed. I would like to know that, is what I'm asking the Board of Adjustments to do. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you, Mr. I don't know what that means.
Talk to Commissioner Nash after the meeting. And that was out of order. Moving on.
We got a motion. We didn't take the vote on it yet.
Oh,
Comment closed, sir.
comments closed. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Closed. Opposed, like sign. That carries. Moving on, Mr. Foreman.
I think that's called a Freudian slip. You jumped to closed before. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This evening, we have for adoption hearing ordinance number 2020-08, an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Columbia County, Florida, amending Chapter 78, Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the County Code of Ordinances relating to the use and regulation of county parks and recreational areas and providing for an effective date. For the benefit of those here who wish to speak on the matter, essentially Articles 1, 2, 3, and 6, as currently codified, all deal with parks and recreation, but 2 of those are specific to Rum Island and Alligator Park. The idea behind this recodification and restatement, as well as the changes that are contained herein, is to streamline that and to make the ordinances more compliant with the charter. Before the public hearing opens, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, I ask to open the public hearing on this matter.
Okay, I now declare the public hearing open. Anybody want to speak for or against this?
Mel, this is you.
My name is Mel Shoykid. I'm from St. Mary's, Georgia. I'm a Bulldog, so don't hold that against me, okay, please? Okay. I just found out recently about Rum Island, and I don't know all that's being involved here, okay? So I'm not so sure about that, but I just have to talk about Rum Island and a little bit of my wife and my experiences, okay? We have been married an extensively long time. That's my wife. We have been on the Ichetucky River. I did a little calculation real quick, probably 106 times since we've been courting and married, okay? In a beautiful, beautiful area, okay? Unfortunately, what's happening with the big hole there and all the fertilizer and so forth, there's getting to be a problem, okay? But that's just one thing. I am a little qualified to talk about this, about the rivers. My wife and I have paddled whitewater, we paddled calm water, probably at least 40 bodies of water in the southeastern part of the United States and up through Maine. Okay. I'm here to support the 138 Rum Outfitter, Mary Lee and Doug Gibson. We were in this area and they're building their business. They're doing everything they possibly could at that time, from probably 4 canoes on their backyard and they're an outfitter, to move on to where they are now. Okay. They are the lovers of the water, the passion of the water, the passion of the rivers, to keep them clean for us and for our grandchildren. And that's really, really important to me, and I hope it's important to you folks. Okay. They're so educated, and the passions are just unbelievable. They're very professional about how they go about it. Also, Doug and Mary Lee meet you for the first time and know you by your first name. And we've been to that area no telling how many times. They've helped us and we've helped them. Here again, I don't know exactly what's going on. I understand there's been some kind of vindication that some citizens are saying that they take up too much room at the Rum Island site when they bring canoes in. Well, we have brought our canoes in ourselves to run the river, to paddle the river, and they come in with their van and they're probably not there 20 minutes and the people are embarking on a river. It's incredible, and the job that they do. So I'm here to support the 138 Rum Island Outfitter, Doug and Mary Lee, and everything they possibly do. I hope you take that in consideration in what you do, commissioners. Here again, I don't know exactly what's happened prior to me coming here. I just heard about this yesterday. My wife and I paddled 7 hours today on a river, and it's wonderful, folks. Have y'all commissioners been to Rum Island? Well, I don't want to shake it. I guess I'm just throwing this out. Have you been and watched them operate? Well, they can't now because Rum Island is under construction. But if you ever watched any of the outfitters work there, they're in and they're out. So I don't really know the problem. I don't think there's any problem whatsoever. I thank you very much for your time. And if I lived here all the time, I'd take y'all down the river.
How many trips do you make to Rum Island a year?
Well, one year we lived here for 2 years. When we were building a house in St. Mary's, we lived on the river. And my guess is, you talk about the Santa Fe River, primarily.
I said Rum Island.
Well, Rum Island, every time we paddle, we go into the spring. Okay, and we go from there. So, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All depends on who wants to come down from. We moved from Marietta, Georgia. Who wants to come down to the river? Once they come here, sometimes we can't keep them away. Okay, it's just so beautiful, beautiful sight. And the rivers are just so personal to us, and I hope they're very personal to everybody here. And I thank you all for listening. I thank you for your patience and what you do. You know, sometimes you're like an official in a ball game. You're never right. But a lot of times you're right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else do?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
I do.
I am looking at the introduction of this ordinance. Everybody knows that Columbia County has some really nice parks. Southside Sports Complex is a park that is second to none in the state of Florida and probably the Southeast. Each park has its own rules, and Clint Pittman, I don't know if he's here tonight somewhere, nobody disputes the job that he and his crew does in keeping these parks maintained. But the language in this introduction to this ordinance is very serious. It says, The Parks and Recreation Director is also authorized with the county manager to create and implement rules that are necessary for the operation of particular parks. But once again, now we have the same problem that we just heard about earlier in the evening, is people making rules and nobody knows what's going on. Clearly, the rules at Southside are not going to be the same rules that you would have at Rhode Island. They would not be the same rules that you would have at Falling Creek, or whatever parks are in the north end of the county, or any other parks in the county. So each park has its own specific rules, and everybody has their own specific interests. So I think it's out of line and out of hand and not well thought out to give Clint Pittman and the county manager the final decision without having a public notice or a comment period like they do with the National Park Service and they do with many federal regulatory agencies, so that the public knows of dependency of rule changes that would affect the parks that they go to, including the commissioners. So I don't think that's thought out. I don't know what it says in the ordinance, but I know what it says in this document dated June 11th, 2020. This is another ill-conceived ordinance by the legal staff of the county and the county manager. I respectfully request that it be put in somewhere in this ordinance that there is a comment period, that people can comment on the rules once they know what the rules are. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stu. Any other public comment? All right, not hearing any, I declare the hearing closed. Commissioners.
To the point, I somewhat agree with him. I think in the ordinance, there should be like baseball fields, like Southside, Fort White. They should have their rules and regulations. The Alligator Park, Rum Island, like things like that should have rules and regulations. The community centers, they should be grouped into like things, and then it should be presented to us, the rules and regulations. And I do agree that the park director and the county manager can make a change, but it should be put on the next agenda for the Board of County Commissioners to adopt, simply because we're going to be the ones fielding the calls on these rule changes. And then we're going to call one and ask what the deal is. So I just think you need to put like things together, come up with the rules and regulations and recommendations from the county manager and the park director, and then adopt them and move on.
I agree with you, Commissioner Nash. I think the public has a right to speak about the rules that we have put in place at the parks. And the public forum of the commissioner meeting is really the only place they have a voice. So, any rule that's changed, I think, should be put on the agenda at the next meeting for the people to have a chance to voice their opinion on.
And I think I mentioned that to Joel last week whenever we were discussing this issue. And I agree with Commissioner Nash, you got to collectively put them together for the community centers and do the breakout. But, because ultimately, the 5 commissioners, are the final say. And I don't think it's right for us to put our staff or our manager in a position where that you got the whole public coming down on them because they had to make a call. Now, Joel, stop me if I misinterpret this, but my impression was when I kind of read that is that, when it goes into giving the authority, because I think I spoke out, wholly on the last meeting that, no, we're going to have created rules and regulations because we're not going to throw a Clint Pittman or Ben Scott or Ron Williams in the middle of that fight. It needs to be spelled out, well and clear. Then, of course, that's when you explained to me throughout the week, last week, relevant to how we got to do it by resolution to set fees and what have you, if we desire to do so for, what I say is the problem at the Rhode Island, but of course it can develop anywhere else. You
Right.
got develop.
I can respond to that.
Yeah.
And so the fees that are established or that are made available under this proposed ordinance
do have to be adopted by the Board of County Commissioners by resolution. So Parks Director can come in and say, hey, I recommend we charge this much for this service. You guys have to approve that. A change to 78-3 sub B would probably read something like the county manager and the county Parks and Recreation Director, with the approval of the Board of County Commissioners by resolution, may create and promulgate rules supplemental to those set forth herein for each of the county's parks and recreation facilities, to the extent such rules are necessary and appropriate to particular parks or recreational facilities. Such rules shall not conflict with the regulations set forth by the Board of County Commissioners, which would of course be this ordinance. The Parks and Recreation Director shall be responsible for the implementation and enforcement of such rules.
Correct.
The thought process on subsection B here was what might seem like minor rules.
Yep.
You know, like what time we're going to close the bathroom to clean it. Things like, that was really the thought process here. The bigger rules are
Right.
captured by the ordinance, but I completely hear what y'all were saying. If we just have it where it's subject to approval by resolution, we can make that amendment.
Yeah, but I'll give you an example. I also want the latitude for the county manager and the parks director, and it happens every year when it comes to baseball season and a time change, and those lights need to stay on till 9 o'clock. They can make that decision. I don't think that needs to come from the board.
Well, and again, that's why subsection B is written this way.
Right.
Actually, the light situation is exactly what I was thinking of. But if we change the B, it will be subject to a resolution. So you can't just kind of, the way I chose the line was the things that are written in black and white in here are like the 10 Commandments, they're carved in stone. All rules other than those in here, Clint can set, right? And then if it gets out of hand, or, it'll come back to the board. If we change B and take that authority away from the Parks Director, which again, totally within your purview to do it, it's not an issue, then every rule change, every little tweak is going to have to come in for a resolution. Based on the concern that's been expressed, that's probably, if you want to make sure there's a public forum and an opportunity for comment, that would be the procedure to go through. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just something we'll need to do from time to time, is come in and update the rules.
Okay. Well, I'm all for following your lead, and you present the rules, and it's just like anything else. You put it out there and then it comes back, you tweak it, you put it out, and you just keep trying to make it better and better.
Well, again, with that amendment that I just read on B, I've already made a note of it. If when the time comes to consider adoption, if there's anyone who's interested in doing that, if they'll just adopt subject to that amendment.
And Joe, I'm not forgiving anybody a free run of all the public parks, that
Yes, sir.
the taxpayers have spent millions of dollars on. But being a president for 8 years in Babe Ruth baseball, you got the Fort White operation, you got Lake City operation, but it needs to be consistent to the point, because, as a volunteer president, it's like Mr. Nash said, you go to mess with the lights, it's damn near World War II. And,
Understood.
so it's got to be consistent throughout,
Yes,
And, but again, because I've seen it happen all the years I've been, affiliated with Clint Pittman, he's very, very passionate about what he does, and it's pretty easy to get upset. But then again, it's a bad lines dens that this board and past boards have thrown him into, and that's what I'm trying to alleviate. And I think Ben, he's being real quiet over there because Ben was right in the middle of it with me all them years. So it's he knows where I'm coming from.
Mr. Scott's on the hook under the charter. So, no matter what y'all put in here, he's already on the hook.
Well, we're the front line really at the ball fields. I get more calls. I get as many calls on that as I do dirt.
Yes, sir. Again, with that amendment, anytime there's a tweak in the rules, it'll just come in and again, not an ordinance, but a resolution. So it's an easy thing to put on the agenda, take under consideration, and vote on. It won't be codified. So, and then Clint can rely on those. If somebody says, why is the rule the way it is? Well, here's the resolution to set it. So we can certainly accommodate that. It's easy.
And I thought Clint does a great job.
Oh, yes, sir. I think
he does a great job.
I don't think anybody's saying he's not.
Sometimes it's just, we're in the middle of it,
Commissioner Ford, when is the projected at this day and time opening of Rum Island?
Is Kevin in the house?
He's back there in the shadows. I think that's him. That's
Give us a
the
towel.
sheriff. No, they ain't. That's
Cause
not
I
the sheriff.
keep moving down, moving it on this, up a little more, moving it up a little more. I don't really know at this time.
Uh-uh. Well, you got
Can
to-
you come to the mic?
Come on.
You gotta have to walk up here. We pay you enough to walk. Thank you, Kevin. I got that 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
3 weeks.
Said 3 weeks, dude.
All right, with that being said, is it time now to set a resolution and have discussion, or do we need to do it the next meeting? Because like I said last week, when Rum Island opens up, these outfitters, like the gentleman was talking, we need to have a set of rules and guidelines and regulations on them the day we open it up. Because if you open the gates up and they're rolling in and out of there, it ain't never gonna change. And like Mr. Williams said last meeting, you're gonna have the same problem you had. How many years ago, Ron? 35, 40?
40 years, I know. I've been there 40 years. And we've been had same problem.
Counselor.
To establish regular commercial use under the permitting section of the ordinance, you have to have at least 6 uses within any 12-month period. I think if you have the resolution on the next board meeting, that'll be a month out from now. I don't think you want to postpone adopting the ordinance. And in terms of a resolution that the public could review and know if they agree with the rules that are being proposed, you don't have notice of that right now. So,
Because we can always come back and change the ordinance and amend it.
well, yeah, I think the ordinance gives you the latitude to adopt as many different resolutions as you
Gotcha.
want.
Gotcha.
So I think you want to go ahead and get the ordinance in place now, because that affords you the opportunity to do the resolution.
Understand.
And so if you do the ordinance with that change, then we could certainly have something ready for that, I believe, July 16th meeting. I think we can do that. I'll give it to Mr. Pittman.
Mr. Scott.
I just wanted to make a comment on the proposed amendment. If you're worried about, because the attorney kind of said, well, if you do that, then you're going to have to bring back every rule change. But when we make the rules for the parks and the individual rules for the parks, then we can say that at that point, the park, all these rules are in place for this park, and the parks director has authority to change hours for the lights. And the parks, so we can, if you accept the amendment that's proposed by the county attorney, when we bring back the rules, we can put those little things in there that we know we don't want to bring back before the board every little time. We want to let the landscape director have some authority to make those changes. We can put that into the rules, I believe.
And all you do is copy the board a memo of a little change you made.
Yes, sir. We just send an email out to the board. Hey, commissioners, we're now turning the lights on at 7 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock, whatever the little change we did.
Okay, what's the wishes of the board?
I don't think we answered Mr. Murphy's question.
I think we did.
Joel answered the question.
Yeah. So if we adopt the ordinance right now, we can come back with resolution next
Yeah,
week
yeah,
or
but
next meeting.
what he's gonna put in the ordinance without our input of what, from the meeting that we had in Fort White, and we promised the folks that we would have a meeting and let them know about the rules and regulations we were gonna set forth. Are we not gonna do that now, or we just,
We're gonna advertise a meeting, and then we'll do that. Once, see, this meeting's not advertised for to set those rules.
okay,
So we're gonna advertise a meeting to set those rules,
Mhm.
and we'll set them at that meeting,
okay,
July 16th.
all right, that's great, that's great.
That's correct.
As long as we do what we told them we were gonna do.
What is the wishes of the board?
So move on the recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner, and okay, can you specify that you're doing it with the amendment, Commissioner Williams?
As amended. Commissioner
Mr.
Williams.
Williams,
Beg pardon?
Can you, can,
specify the amendment with the changes made?
Yes, sir. And that's order number, that would be ordinance number 2020-08.
have a motion?
Second.
Second by, motion by Commissioner Williams. I have a second by Commissioner Nash.
Boys having dyslexia, yeah.
I know. Any more discussion? I'll allow it. Come on.
Thank you. This is specifically about Rum Island. I don't think you'd be surprised how many people from out of state come and canoe our rivers, and how many people from out of the county come and canoe our rivers here. How much money they spend here. Okay, all this, we're all trying to get all this in the same situation so we can all grow to where we were. Okay, Rum Island is an incredible situation. I've met so many people from so many different areas that I personally have sent them. Okay, I'm also I didn't tell you this, I used to be a former head football coach and so forth. And right now I'm a substitute teacher at Camden County High School. And we recently sent down some teachers here to do at Rum Island, help them, whatever they had to do. So keep that in mind, the goodwill that the outfitter in particular, okay, what they do for the area. Okay, thank you.
You know, our
Thank
tourist
you.
development, our slogan is Springs or Rust for Columbia County, right?
I'm sorry.
For our tourist development, our slogan is Springs or Rust. That's what we mainly promote in our areas, the springs.
I don't like that. I love that. That's great. I'm a believer in it. I really am. I just think it's just so good.
Thank you, sir. All right, what are the wishes of the board? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, that carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item on the agenda is for an adoption hearing, public hearing is ordinance 2020-07, an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Columbia County, Florida, amending Chapter 74 of the County Code of Ordinances entitled Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions by providing for noise control, creating Article 5 entitled Noise Control, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. Unless there's any questions from the commissioners before the public hearing is open, Mr. Chair, I request opening the public hearing.
I do have I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Attorney, that ordinance, will you read the whole, the ordinance, the substance of the ordinance into the minutes?
Yes, sir. It's about 12 pages. Is that
Well,
okay?
I mean, it need to be, to me, it should be read into the minutes so everybody understand what it's saying. They don't understand what, a lot of times a person can read something, but hearing it from the attorney, it says something different. So that way we know. And I will request that.
I agree, but my understanding was that the document we got sent is our first draft. It's something we're going to work through. So to me, it doesn't do any good to read the ordinance into the minutes until after we decide exactly what is going to be in the ordinance. Because to my point, I had a lot of comment this week on the times, and I tried to explain to people that you provided us that document as a starting point, that those weren't the times we were going to adopt tonight. We were going to listen to discussion and decide what times we wanted, that you pulled that from somewhere else for our benefit.
Yes, sir.
So
So
if you have 12 pages, you put some thought in how what the wording of the ordinance. I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
We're going to craft it tonight.
Okay.
let me be clear. So this is an adoption here. So
Uh-huh.
you have the ability to adopt this tonight.
Tonight.
If
That's why I want read into the, a verbal, reading of it. This is an adoption hearing. Now, if we want to come back and change some things, we have the ability to do so.
you can make
Am I
changes.
right, Mr. Chairman?
You are. Procedurally, yes, sir, you're correct. So if there are significant changes or substantial changes that happen through the public hearing, which is very, very possible, you can table this for another night to adopt it on another night, July 16th, if you wish to, if that's a choice of the board. But you are procedurally positioned to adopt this tonight.
But we can make our changes and adopt it tonight.
Yes,
We
sir.
can amend it.
Just as you amended the last one you adopted, you can amend this through the public hearing process.
That was my understanding. This was our
Yes,
start
sir.
point.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So do we want to read it now, Commissioner Williams, or do we want to make our changes and read it at the end?
I would like to hear what we start, the starting point. I want to know who's at the plate and what they're saying.
All right, well, everybody lean back because he's got 12 pages to go.
Well,
I think
he
that's
get paid by the hour.
He's he's an articulate reader too, Ron.
Check that, it's 17 pages. No, I'm fine with it. All right, so let's begin.
Dr. Foreman, you fixing to see him at his best.
All that money he paid for my education and I can read. You know?
Dr. Foreman's back there seeing if he got his money's worth out of it, Joe.
Commissioners, I already introduced the ordinance by title. I'll begin with the substance of it. Article 5, Noise Control, Section 74-100, Purpose. This article is enacted to protect, preserve, and promote the health, safety, welfare, peace, and quiet of the citizens of the county through the reduction, control, and prevention of loud and raucous noise, or any noise which unreasonably disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of reasonable persons of ordinary sensitivity. Section 74-101, Findings, subsection A. Loud and raucous noise degrades the environment of the county to a degree that, sub 1, is harmful to the health, welfare, and safety of its inhabitants and visitors. Sub 2, interferes with the comfortable enjoyment of life and property. Sub 3, interferes with the well-being, tranquility, and privacy of the home. And sub 4, both causes and aggravates health problems. Subsection B, both the effective control and the elimination of loud and raucous noise are essential to the health and welfare of Columbia County's inhabitants and visitors, and to the conduct of normal pursuits of life, including recreation, work, and communication. Subsection C, the use of sound amplification equipment creates loud and raucous noise that may, in a particular manner and at a particular time and place, substantially and unreasonably invade the privacy, peace, and freedom of inhabitants of and visitors to the county. Subsection D, certain short-term easing of noise restrictions is essential to allow the construction and maintenance of structures, infrastructure, and other elements necessary for the physical and commercial vitality of the county. Section 74-102, titled Scope. This article applies to the control of all sound originating within the jurisdictional limits of the county lying outside the municipal limits of the city of Lake City, essentially the unincorporated areas. Section 74-103, definitions. The following words, terms, and phrases, when used in this article, shall have the meanings ascribed to them in this section, except where the context clearly indicates a different meaning. A, emergency means any occurrence or set of circumstances involving actual or imminent physical trauma or property damage demanding immediate attention. B, emergency work means any work performed for the purpose of preventing or alleviating physical trauma or property damage, whether actually caused or threatened by an emergency, or work by private or public utilities when restoring utility service. Noise-sensitive area includes, but is not limited to, a posted area where a school, hospital, nursing home, church, court, public library, or similar institution is located. D, public right-of-way means any street, avenue, boulevard, highway, sidewalk, alley, or similar place normally accessible to the public, which is owned or controlled by a government entity. E, public space means any real property or structures on real property owned by a government entity and normally accessible to the public, including but not limited to parks and recreational areas. F, residential area means any real property which contains a structure or building in which one or more persons reside, provided that the structure or building is properly zoned or is legally non-conforming for residential use in accordance with the terms and maps of the county's zoning articles. Section 74-101, general prohibition, subsection A. No person shall make, continue, or cause to be made or continued, 1, any unreasonably loud or raucous noise, 2, any noise which unreasonably disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of reasonable persons of ordinary sensitivity within the unincorporated areas of the county, or 3, any noise which is so harsh, prolonged, unnatural, or unusual in time or place as to occasion unreasonable discomfort to any person within the neighborhood from which said noise emanates, or as to unreasonably interfere with the peace and comfort of neighbors or their guests, or operators or customers in places of business, or as to detrimentally or adversely affect such residences or places of business. B, factors for determining whether a sound is unreasonably loud and raucous include, but are not limited to, the following. 1, the proximity of the sound to sleeping facilities, whether residential or commercial. 2, the land use, nature, and zoning of the area from which the sound emanates and the area where it is received or perceived. 3, the time of day or night the sound occurs. 4, the duration of the sound. And 5, whether the sound is recurrent, intermittent, or constant. Section 74-105, noise is prohibited. The following acts are declared to be per se violations of this article. This enumeration does not constitute an exclusive list. A, unreasonable noise, the unreasonable making of or knowingly and unreasonably permitting to be made any unreasonably loud, boisterous, or unusual noise, disturbance, commotion, or vibration in any boarding facility, dwelling, place of business, or other structure, or upon any public street, park, or other place or building. The ordinary and usual sounds, noises, commotion, or vibration incidental to the operation of these places when conducted in accordance with the usual standards of practice and in a manner which will not unreasonably disturb the peace and comfort of adjacent residences, or which will not detrimentally affect operators of adjacent places of business, are exempted from this provision. B, vehicle horns, signaling devices, and similar devices. The sounding of any horn, signaling device, or other similar device, or on any automobile, motorcycle, or other vehicle, on any right-of-way, or in any public space of the county for more than 10 consecutive seconds. The sounding of any horn, signaling device, or other similar device as a danger warning is exempt from this prohibition. C, non-emergency signaling devices, sounding or permitting sounding of any amplified signal from any bell, chime, siren, whistle, or similar device intended primarily for non-emergency purposes from any place for more than 10 consecutive seconds in any hourly period. The reasonable sounding of such devices by houses of religious worship, ice cream trucks, seasonal contribution solicitors, or by law enforcement for traffic control purposes are exempt from the operation of this provision. D, emergency signaling devices. The intentional sounding or permitting the sounding outdoors of any emergency signaling device, including fire, burglar, civil defense alarm, siren, whistle, or similar emergency signaling device, except in an emergency or except as provided in subsection D1 and 2 of this section. Subsection D1. Testing of an emergency signaling device shall occur between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Any testing shall use only the minimum cycle test time. In no case shall such test time exceed 5 minutes. Testing of the emergency signaling system shall not occur more than once in each calendar month. D2. Sounding or permitting the sounding of any exterior burglar or fire alarm or any motor vehicle burglar alarm shall terminate within 15 minutes of activation unless an emergency exists. If a false or accidental activation of an alarm occurs more than twice in a calendar month, the owner or person responsible for the alarm shall be in violation of this article. Subsection E, radios, televisions, boom boxes, phonographs, stereos, musical instruments, and similar devices. The use or operation of a radio, television, boombox, stereo, musical instrument, or similar device that produces or reproduces sound in a manner that is plainly audible to any person other than the player or operator of the device and those who are voluntarily listening to the sound and which unreasonably disturbs the peace, quiet, and comfort of neighbors and passersby, or is plainly audible at a distance of 50 feet from any person in a commercial or industrial area or public space. The use or operation of a radio, television, boombox, stereo, musical instrument, or similar device that produces or reproduces sound in a manner that is plainly audible to any person other than the player or operator of the device, and those who are voluntarily listening to the sound and unreasonably disturbs the peace, quiet, and comfort of neighbors in residential or noise-sensitive areas, including multifamily or single-family dwellings. F, loudspeakers, amplifiers, public address systems, and similar devices. The unreasonably loud and raucous use of or operation of a loudspeaker, amplifier, public address system, or other device for producing or reproducing sound between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. on weekdays and 10 p.m. and 10 a.m. on weekends and holidays in the following areas. 1, within or adjacent to residential or noise-sensitive areas. 2, within public space if the sound is plainly audible across the real property line of the public space from which the sound emanates and is unreasonably loud and raucous. This shall not apply to any public performance, gathering, or parade for which a permit has been obtained from a governmental agency with jurisdiction. G, yelling, shouting, and similar activities. Yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, or singing in a residential or noise-sensitive area or in public places between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. or at any time or place so as to unreasonably disturb the quiet, comfort, or repose of reasonable persons of ordinary sensitivities. H, animals and birds. Unreasonably loud and raucous noise emitted by an animal or bird for which a person is responsible. A person is responsible for an animal if the person owns, controls, or otherwise cares for the animal or bird. Sounds made by animals or birds in animal shelters, kennels, veterinary hospitals, pet shops, or pet kennels licensed under and in compliance with any applicable licensing and permitting provisions are exempt from this subsection. I, loading or unloading merchandise, materials, and equipment the creation of unreasonably loud, raucous, and excessive noise in connection with the loading and unloading of any vehicle at a place of business or residence other than between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. on weekdays and Saturdays, and between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Sundays. J, construction or repair of residential buildings, excavation of streets and highways. The construction, demolition, alteration, or repair of any building or the excavation of streets and highways other than between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. on weekdays and Saturdays between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Sundays. This prohibition does not apply to the delivery and installation of concrete and other materials associated with residential slab installation. In cases of emergency, construction or repair noises are exempt from this provision. K, noise-sensitive areas, schools, courts, churches, hospitals, and similar institutions. The creation of any unreasonably loud and raucous noise adjacent to any noise-sensitive areas while it is in use, which unreasonably interferes with the workings of the institution or which disturbs the persons in these institutions, provided that conspicuous signs delineating the boundaries of the noise-sensitive area are displayed in the streets surrounding this noise-sensitive area. L, blowers and similar devices. In residential and noise-sensitive areas between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m., the operation of any noise-creating blower, power fan, or any internal combustion engine, the operation of which causes noise due to the explosion of operating gases or fluids, provided that the noise is unreasonably loud and raucous and can be heard across the property line of the property from which it emanates. M, commercial establishments adjacent to residential property. Unreasonably loud and raucous noise from the premises of any commercial establishment, including any outdoor area, which is part of or under the control of the establishment between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., which is plainly audible at a distance of 5 feet from any residential property. Section 74-106. Yeah, good news, guys. We're close. Okay. 74-106 exemptions. Sounds caused by the following are exempt from the prohibitions set out in section 74-105. A, motor vehicles on traffic ways of the county, provided that the prohibition of section 74-105 sub B continues to apply. B, repairs of utility structures which pose a clear and imminent danger to life, health, or significant loss of property. C, sirens, whistles, or bells lawfully used by emergency vehicles, other alarm systems used in the case of fire, collision, civil defense, police activity, or imminent danger, provided that the prohibition contained in section 74-105D continues to apply. D, the emission of sound for the purposes of alerting persons to the existence of an emergency or the emission of sound in the performance of emergency work. E, repairs or excavation of bridges, streets, or highways by or on behalf of any local government, the state, or the federal government between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. when public welfare and convenience renders it impractical to perform the work between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Outdoor school and playground activities. Reasonable activities conducted on public playgrounds and public or private school grounds which are conducted in accordance with the manner in which such spaces are generally used, including but not limited to school athletic and school entertainment events. G, other outdoor events, outdoor gatherings, concerts, public dances, shows, and sporting events, and other similar outdoor events and associated noise shall be exempt from this section, provided that a temporary use permit has been obtained if required. Outdoor hunting or hunting sports, the discharge of firearms in the normal course of legal hunting activities or customary shooting sports such as skeet, trap, and target shooting. I, non-residential and multifamily residential construction projects approved and permitted by the county. J, outdoor concerts and events that are subject to the county's temporary use permitting requirements and which are held on property designated for such use in the future land use map of the Columbia County Comprehensive Plan shall be allowed to operate until 11 p.m. on Friday or Saturday, provided a temporary use permit has been obtained for the event. Section 74-107, enforcement, sub A, the county sheriff will have primary responsibility for the enforcement of the noise regulations contained herein. Nothing in this article shall prevent the sheriff from obtaining voluntary compliance by way of warning, notice, or education. Subsection B, if a person's conduct would otherwise violate this article and constitutes and consists of speech or communication of a gathering with others to hear or observe speech or communication, or of a gathering with others to picket or otherwise express in a nonviolent manner a position on social, economic, political, or religious questions, then the person must be ordered to and have the opportunity to move, disperse, or otherwise remedy the violation prior to any citation being issued. Section 74-108, penalties. A person who violates a provision of this article is guilty of a civil infraction, which is punishable by a fine not to exceed $500. B, each occurrence of a violation, or in the case of continuous violations, each day a violation occurs or continues, constitutes a separate offense and may be punished separately. That concludes the substance of the ordinance, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Mr. Foreman, where would our raceways fall under the commercial establishment section of this, or would they fall under the outdoor sporting section of this?
It would be considered an outdoor sporting event, and to the extent that it causes intrusion of raucous noise to the level that it disturbs a person of ordinary sensibilities in an adjacent residential area, that would constitute a violation.
Okay, our outdoor music venues,
With a special use permit as late as 11 p.m.
what about our outdoor use venues that are, a restaurant who has an outdoor?
If there's no adjoining residential areas, you got to read. So when you look at these restrictions, they're layered, right? It's not just no noise between one time and another. Unless you're in a residential area, then it's pretty extreme. But they all require that it be such noise that it's, raucous and loud and would offend the sensibilities of an ordinary person. I kind of go back to a comment that I've heard a few times. This is very common sense in the way it actually operates, right? You have to be making too much noise, and you have to have a victim or somebody that's complaining, and then you have to meet the land use criteria. These are all carefully spelled out, and then the exemptions are enumerated to kind of get to where you're going, which is, how do I know for sure if I'm actually prone to violate this? And so that's why it's so long, because there's all these different criteria we can run through.
Well, I'm going to recommend that we up those times in
Yes,
both those circumstances to midnight on weekends and to 11 p.m. on weeknights, as to not interfere with any of those business activities currently going on.
Yes, sir. And again, when the board's doing deliberation after the public hearing, if there's any adjustments that need to be made, we can certainly go through each and every one of these and
All right.
talk about those.
Any other comment before we open public hearing? Go ahead.
Mr. Foreman, what section in there did we address the protection of the farmer?
The protection of the farmer.
Yes, sir.
Again, are we talking about residential areas or?
We're talking about just like a true story. Get this call from someone moved in from South Florida next to the farm
Mhm.
and got complaining about the cows mooing. The noise. I mean, this is a serious accusation.
I understand. So when it talks about animals and birds,
Mhm.
that's not
You
livestock.
mentioned animal and birds. I saw that.
Right, that's not livestock.
Mhm.
Livestock is a separate legal type of creature.
Okay.
Okay, so we talk about an animal or a bird, we're talking about a cockatoo that sits on the back porch at 2:00 in the morning and calls and calls and calls.
Okay.
We're not talking about a cow that's milking. That's livestock.
What about
Now,
the animals? Would that be pets?
yes, sir. Animals are macaw monkey or, monkeys and things like that. Now, what we can do to address that is we can accept livestock. We can specifically say excluding livestock.
Okay.
And that would certainly accommodate that concern. In terms of farm, you can also have an exclusion for farm equipment. So when you look at the exemptions under 74-106, you can throw in here, one of the examples is outdoor school and playground activities, no matter when the noise is being made. CHS football game is going on. That's a school-related outdoor activity. The game goes into quadruple overtime or something, and you're out there at 1:00 in the morning, it's exempted from this.
So barking dogs would fall under birds and animals?
Barking dogs, we actually have a nuisance ordinance for that already. So it wasn't really essential to capture the dogs with this, but yes, sir, they would qualify as an animal because they're not livestock.
Now, in this proposed ordinance, we protect the airport.
Yes, sir, we don't have jurisdiction over the airport.
Beg pardon?
We don't have jurisdiction over the FAA is going to have jurisdiction over the airport.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it's with jurisdiction. We have to be real careful about that.
All right, so with them doing the burnouts and all, when the neighbors complain, there's no,
We'll refer them to the city of Lake City and to the FAA.
Okay, then back on the agricultural aspect of it. I understand the thing all about the animals or what have you, but hypothetical situation, man sets up, he's gonna sit there and grind 30 tons of corn, adjacent within who determines the raucous? I mean, because it's as simple as this. If you ever ground 30 tons of corn, it may be annoying to some, not to the others. But my point's simple as that And I'm just going to go ahead and use the Oaks as an example. We all know the situation at the Oaks, you know, but well within possibility, the man can set up a portable grind mill back there, turn that thing on, and, you know, everybody's phone's fixing to go to ringing. So, you know, but he's supporting an agricultural operation. I think this has got it covered relevant to the animal, but the operation, I mean, you know, have a bad hurricane or something other. The man's got to go out there and he ain't got electricity. He's fixing to run his, you know, he's fixing to turn on a diesel pump to run that, you know, his irrigation pumps, watering the cows or what have you.
So when we talk about factors for determining whether a sound is unreasonably loud and raucous, the five that are enumerated, they're not exclusive, but the five that are enumerated are the proximity of the sound to sleeping facilities, whether residential or commercial. So you couldn't do this behind a hotel either, for example, if people are sleeping there. The land use, nature, and zoning of the area from which the sound emanates and the area where it's received or perceived. Okay, so one of the factors we consider is, well, that's agriculturally zoned land that the sound's coming from. It's residentially zoned land where the complaint's coming from. Is that something we need? And you consider it case by case. It's a factor. So in law, we have factors and elements. If it's an element, it means all of these things have to be present. If it's a factor, it just means these are things you should consider. And these would be things for the law enforcement officer to consider as he's evaluating the complaint and whether or not he's going to go tell the person to stop the noise, right? Is this in fact qualifying raucous noise? The time of day or night the sound occurs. You notice there's a specific exclusion for pouring concrete for residential pads, right? Because we like to do those before the sun comes up if we can, because otherwise we'll kill some people while they're trying to lay the foundations for these homes, right? That's why there's an exclusion there. There's agricultural operations that I'm sure people like to do before the sun gets too high in the air, right? So that's here. Is there a reason to be doing something at 2:30 in the morning? Is there a reason to be doing something at 3 o'clock in the morning? That's where that's going to come in on this factor. The duration of the sound. So is it just impulse sound, you know, a bang, you know, once every hour or so? Or is it a constant din of, you know, that's going to be a factor that law enforcement has to take into consideration. Whether the sound is recurrent, intermittent, or constant as well, it is a factor. So is this something that goes off every hour on the hour, you know, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week? Those are things that will be considered.
But when it comes to law enforcement, I mean, I'm not picking on no officer, but I mean, you send a guy fresh out of, how is he to go out there and determine whether it is a raucous, according to this ordinance? How is he supposed to go out there and do his job when he's debating with a landowner and a mega farm over here that's trying to feed 1,700 head of cows?
He's not debating. I mean, don't misunderstand. He's going to hear the noise himself. He's going to consider whether a person of he's not going to ask whether the victim is affected. He's going to say, would a person of ordinary sensibility essentially be bothered by this, right? So here's your alternatives. You remember we talked about the nuisance standard versus the measuring devices at the last meeting we had, the workshop we had on this way back before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
The measuring device technique doesn't really work because you have to have the equipment ordered for all of your law enforcement officers. They all have to be trained on it, has to be calibrated on a regular basis, extremely expensive. It's also easy to defeat because all you have to do to fight a citation is come in and say, when's the last time you calibrated your device? When it turns out it's not been recently enough, they throw the ticket out. The nuisance standard, which is what this articulates, has been upheld by the courts. If a person of reasonable sensibility can go out, stand in somebody's living room and hear the TV next door, just as if he's standing in the same room, this allows me to go next door, knock on the door and say, you got to turn that down. You're violating the ordinance. Alternatively, if I stand on the property line, the person's complaining, but I'm standing on their property line and all I hear is a little bit of muffled. That's not going to offend a person of ordinary sensibility in that law enforcement. And he has to apply his judgment. Ultimately, the court would decide if the law enforcement officer was right. A magistrate would decide if the law enforcement officer was right. But you have to have the ability to let law enforcement apply a reasonable standard. And that's the only way you can do it. It's called an objectively reasonable person. Alternatively, you have to go into a much more technical type of enforcement regime that, I don't know that our law enforcement is equipped. I know our law enforcement isn't equipped for it right now. And I don't think, you'll remember the materials I showed you at the workshop from FDLE. FDLE does not recommend policing using measuring devices because of the complexity of it. And it doesn't result in a lot of compliance. This should, again, according to the FDLE study that I shared with you, this should result in compliance, which is the objective. You're not looking to issue citations. You just want people to turn the noise down. That's why it's written this way. And I completely, I just read the whole thing. I completely understand it's a lot. It seems convoluted, but it's written this way for a reason.
Lawyers.
One other one that you mentioned was road construction.
Yes, sir.
And you put a start, and you can start at a certain time, and you realize the DOT let some jobs that you only work on during the night, and they would be in residential areas.
Yeah, there's exemptions for that.
So you got exemption to that in there.
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, let me make sure I point it out to you. The repairs and excavation of bridges, streets, or highways by or on behalf of any local government, the state, or the federal government between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. when public welfare and convenience renders it impractical to perform the work between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. So one of the specific exemptions says you can go past 8 p.m. and you can work before 7 a.m. if it's basically unsafe to do that during daylight hours. Okay. And we see that all the time, right? So the road's going to be closed after 7:30 p.m. or after 9 o'clock p.m. You have a specific exemption for that.
Okay. And Mr. Foreman, I don't know how we're going to address this in a north. It's almost impossible. The more complaints I get is loud music moving. Park at the red light and boom, da boom, da boom, da boom. It's almost impossible to enforce that if a law enforcement officer is not sitting there at the scene.
Right.
So no matter what we do, it's going enforcing that. It's going to be a lot of that going to slip through the crack.
Right.
Because there's no one there to say, well, I heard law enforcement is not there at the time.
Yes, sir. So yeah, I think we talked about that in the last meeting. It's noise offenses are something you have to catch them red-handed, right? The noise has to be ongoing. You go over and knock on doors, so you got to turn that down. You go next door, so you got to turn off that piece of equipment. The loud vehicles are an issue. Now, Sheriff Hunter was kind enough to share with me this accredited set of procedures that's used by Santa Rosa County. And Santa Rosa County, which is, again, as I recommend, is to follow 316.3045 of Florida statutes, which just says it's unlawful to do that. And so what that does is rather than put it in code where it relies on a complaint, law enforcement is empowered to patrol for it. So if they hear just crazy amounts of noise, it says it is unlawful, hold on a second, to operate or amplify the sound produced by a radio, tape player, or other mechanical sound-making device or instrument from within the motor vehicle so that the sound is 1, plainly audible at a distance of 25 feet or more from the motor vehicle, or 2, louder than necessary for convenient hearing by persons inside the vehicle in areas adjoining churches, schools, or hospitals. So, and again, this is a police practice that's accredited by the Florida Sheriff's Association. So I think we, maybe ask the sheriff if he'll look at doing that.
There's nothing that'll stop a deputy from pulling somebody over if they're going down the road with the base, basically vibrating over car around them.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the statute that authorizes
Exactly.
it. Again, the Florida Sheriff's Association has accredited this procedure, and cites this as their authority. And again, Sheriff Hunter provided this to me.
Right.
I definitely don't want to speak for Sheriff Hunter. I think you guys know that we try not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where, to answer your question, Commissioner, that's where a lot of that's going to fall. I also want to point out, because I know there's been a lot of comments on social media since this came out, the whole issue with straight pipes and loud trucks and things like that, I hear the complaints like I'm sure most of you do. That is another issue of state law under section 316, 293, sub 5, that says no person shall modify the exhaust system of a motor vehicle or any other noise abatement device of a motor vehicle operated or to be operated upon the highways of this state in such a manner that the noise emitted by the motor vehicle is above that emitted by the vehicle as originally manufactured. And then it also says no person shall operate such a vehicle. So that's already a matter of state law. So there's really no reason unless you want to be, try to be more restrictive, there's no reason to get into that enforcement area.
I don't see how you'd be more restrictive. I mean, it's like those complaints need to go to the sheriff.
It's a law
To handle.
enforcement issue at this point. Yes.
And if he gets enough calls saying it's a problem, then they'll start pulling people over. Same way in the city with the police chief. If she gets enough calls saying both of those issues are a problem, I guarantee you they'll start pulling people over.
Right.
So, commissioners, if you will, let's open the public hearing here from the public, and then we'll come back. So I now declare this public hearing open. Anybody to speak for or against this? Yes, sir.
My name is Wendell Durrance. I'm here representing Alltech Raceway. I'm here to address this proposed noise ordinance. To start with, before we bought this property, I did my homework, and there wasn't any noise ordinances or curfews around this racetrack. This was a contributing factor and one of the reasons why we bought this track in 2015. Now we've spent nearly $1.5 million to get this facility reopened and where it is today. And now there may be a noise ordinance or a curfew because of people complaining. As I said, I did my homework. Most of these homes, except for the Farnell place on Farnell Road, were not here before the racetrack opened in 1972. Most were built several years after the track opened. I guess you can say it's kind of like building a damn airport and expecting planes not to fly. Or building a house by an airport and expecting planes not to fly. When we changed the track in 2015, Mr. Farnell sold us to Clay to do so. He has no problem with the track. He actually owns 450 acres to the east of our racetrack that nobody lives on. We put a 10-foot fence around turn 3 and 4, which faces Howell Road, to help with the sound for the neighbors. Some still complain, but many more of the neighbors come to the races. I said, now I know a few people are complaining that say that we run all hours into the night. Some of this was given to Mr. Foreman. He knows about this. I said, this is not true. Our scoring system, which scores our cars, is on a national system, and our race starts and times and finish times are recorded. And I have documents of proof from every race we've had. 80% of our races, or more than 90%, have been done before 12 o'clock. However, there are a few that has went over by uncontrollable circumstances, such as weather delays, accidents on the track, the number of cars that show up for each event. And not only do we put up an effort to end these races early, we have each races on time limits. Our racetrack is family oriented. We have over 20 part-time employees. What we bring into this county is revenue from sales tax, restaurants, hotels, gas stations is in the tens of thousands of dollars every time we open the doors. On average, we have between 1,200 and 1,500 people with our fans and our race teams combined. And we've had races in 2019 with over 3,000 people there. And now with the track continually growing and gaining national attention, for 2021, we have some nationally sanctioned events coming. With what we have in store for our speed weeks, we're expecting 15,000 to 20,000 people over a 3-day run for our speed weeks, which will be in the first week of February. These people be staying in hotels, eating in restaurants, buying gas, shopping in our stores and malls in Columbia County and surrounding counties. In the real world, it'd be easy to say, yeah, we'll be done by 12. But in the racing world, it isn't always that case, depending on how many race teams shows up or any uncontrollable circumstances that may occur. A curfew could and would scare off some potential customers. The mentality is that if the fans don't get to see the full event that is on our schedule for the night, they might not come back to our races. I said, and they even would possibly want money refunded if we have to cut our races short. with these documents that I brought, and I have them from every race and I can provide those, a curfew would possibly hurt our fan base count just to satisfy a few disgruntled people. The racing events that we have are not just entertainment for our fans. Some of our racers are professional that travel from track to track, from state to state. Some bigger events, and they do run for points, not only at our track, but on a national level. And they get national recognition. Therefore, this is much bigger than it is just any Saturday night racing. And I want to go back to the family-oriented part. In 2019, we averaged over 240 kids under 12 years old. We gave away over 100 bicycles last year. We had bicycle races for them. We have bounce houses. We have water slides for them. What's going on in today's time? We need family-oriented, things for our kids to go to. If I'm forced to have these races done by 12 o'clock, or I'm gonna be fined, and Mr. Foreman set up the $500, that forces us to cut out what we're doing for our kids. We're trying to take kids away from their phones, their computers, whatever they're doing or not. They're not living the way we grew up. It's a different world. So how do we, I feel like I'm being forced to take away what we're going to do for the kids and what we already do. Hell, last year on our back to school opening race, we gave away 269 stuffed backpacks for kids that showed up that night. That's how many kids under 12 we had at our racetrack. 269 for one night. I just think this ordinance deal, I don't know. Hell, I talked about the 450 acres to the east. To the west of us, there's a 240 acre farmland that's owned by David Mann. Nobody lives on. Nobody lives on the 450 acres. The house to the south of us, there's 2 houses over there. Miss Mary Mann occasionally comes by the racetrack. The other one there, Mr. Bill, his son comes to the races. The only complaints we are getting are from the Howe end of our property. I'm not going to call no names. But again, Mr. Foreman is aware of this situation because I had to retain him as a lawyer last year. And I just don't think this is right for just just a few people to be able to do this to a thriving business.
Go ahead, Mr. Commissioner.
What, they propose on it at 12 o'clock. What would be a decent cutoff time that you think you would need to finish a race, except for those occasions where weather or something intervened?
This year, I've got the documents here I can give you, everybody. The last 2 races that we've had, 11:47 was the latest we run. We try to we really force our deal to keep moving so we get it over. Last year in 2019, we ran 5 classes during the course of our night. For the remainder of 2020, I've took away a class and cut us down to 4 classes. We're usually done by 11:30. I just don't want to be faced where we do run over, that I'm gonna have to pay a damn $500 fine.
Would just hypothetically speaking, would 1 o'clock suit your schedule better?
It would. I would like to see the racetrack exempt from the ordinance.
Well, it can't be
because we are all the way on the south end of town.
It can't be completely exempt, but there should be a happy medium there somewhere that we can all agree to.
Yes, sir.
To what to make sure that you have the time to get your races done.
Yes, sir.
You're saying 90% of them is done before 12 o'clock. Now.
Absolutely.
If it's extended to 1 o'clock until 12 o'clock, then that should put you in the
absolutely.
I
think that would be great.
How many races during the year run over 12 o'clock?
I think we've had 4, maybe 5 since 2015 run over.
I know of one.
Yes, I went at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We had one that went at 4 o'clock. We had one that went to 1:15, and the rest of them have been 12:30s, 12:40s. I can present all of these documents to y'all, and you can see them. I got to, if you would like to see one now, I can show you how these work. They are on a national schedule through West Hope, who is a scoring organization. If you look, this is our feature at the end of the night. This is the start time. This is the elapsed time, the total time we ran. This is what was under green flag elapsed. If you add this time to this time, that's when the last flag fell. We have every race we've ever had. We have this document on every one of them. I can literally show you which ones went over 12 o'clock. I mean, I can present this to the county or whatever I need.
Now, when you say go over 12 o'clock, you talking about finish or drop flag?
No, I'm talking finish.
Okay.
We started all before 12 o'clock. I haven't started on the one night that we was talking about. Yeah, we did. We didn't start the last race till it was after 12. But this was in August of last year. And it went until after 3 o'clock in the morning. But it was a big race. It was a special event. We had 83 cars show up for one class. This is the class, the race I'm talking about, where we had over 3,000 people at this event. We couldn't just shut it down and say, y'all go home, we're done. I mean, it was a mistake. We tried, the people that brought this race in, they said we can do it all in one day. We've done it up in Georgia one day. I said, I don't think we can. We did it in one day. Here we're under 4 o'clock in the morning. This past year, in February, we done the same race again. We done it Friday and Saturday.
2-day deal.
And we were done 11:15. I mean, I understand.
It's a learning experience.
It's a learning experience. I mean, we just bought the track in 15, and we've got a lot of national attention going on right now. We've got a Lucas Oil Lake ball scheduled for 3 days this week next year. I have to pay them $135,000 for 3 times the race.
Mr. Foreman. I just got a question other things because it relates to this. You're familiar with the agreement we have with the other racetrack?
Yeah, it's a consent order from.
Now, that consent order does allow them, under certain circumstances, to run past midnight, does it?
There has to be coordination with the county manager, and the notice typically has to be given in advance.
Now, would that same type of agreement benefit these folks?
We could certainly formulate the same sort of agreement in terms of, how it works.
Because the other track's happy with theirs. I think they do have special events that come in where they have to run past 1 o'clock. I think that's addressed in the agreement, and it works.
Yeah, so what it is, it's a consent order. Now, what I would recommend, since we only have the 2 tracks, is actually Mr. Durrance's recommendation that you just take racetracks out of this, subject to entering into an agreement. And then we'll have a special, regulatory scheme for racetracks.
Because he's mentioned council, and the whole, and this is how that agreement with the other track came about, was legal action led to that. And so I do know both parties, and I think if we don't do something, it's going to come to legal action leading to that we're going to have to hammer out an agreement like we have with the other track.
Right. And for edification, since Mr. Durrance did mention it, he asked me to assist him with, I believe, Mr. Adams before this ever became a board issue. And that was the objective, was to try to work out some sort of an agreement. And certainly now, if the county's, if the board's interested in doing that.
Well, it works both ways, because I've actually talked to the owner of the other track, and they don't want to be held to a different standard than this one. And I think it's only fair to do that.
Mr. Chair, if that's the pleasure of the board, it's certainly something that can be accommodated. It is a unique circumstance. We have the 2 tracks.
Well, and like you said, he has been there for how many years?
Since 1972.
1972. So,
Yes,
I mean,
The first house that was
this
built
has been a
there,
racetrack here.
the only house that was there was Mr. Farnell's house, Crockett Farnell. He's the damn judge down south. Mr. Adams' house was built 6 years after the racetrack was built. So he built the racetrack, his house on top of a racetrack. 6 years after the fact.
Mr. Attorney, and I don't remember the whole wording of the consent order.
Yes, sir.
With the consent order, if both tracks is under the same regulation, do the consent order for the other racetrack says to 1 o'clock?
I don't have it with me, Mr. Commissioner. I'd have to pull it and look at it. It's fairly detailed.
I think the way it read was, Commissioner, the way it read was there's special races they have, they know are going to go over a certain number a year. He's indicating he's only had 4 races since 2015 that's went past midnight.
Yeah.
There's some allowances in that consent order to allow a certain number to go over.
So I can't speak to specifics, but that's exactly right. What Commissioner Witt said is there's sort of an allocation. You have this many races that go this many hours and this many, and you have this many practice days for Thursdays and things like that they wanted. And then they have an allowance for that for the year. And then they let Mr. Scott know, hey, we're going to use one of these days. Hey, we're going to use one of these days. So he gets advance notice. And so if there's a noise complaint, why are they doing this? Well, they're using one of their days.
But I think it would work out somewhere where from the testimony he gave, that most of his races over at 12, 15, 11, 15, 12, 15. We cut it off at 1 o'clock and then anything go over, he'll use one of his chips, if you want to call it that, and all the contact staff and staff say, this race will probably go on at 3 o'clock. So when people get the call and we know that there's a race going on at 3 o'clock in the morning, have to finish up until about 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, then we know the reason why that's happening.
Well, I also don't want to oversell it because there are drop dead deadlines in that order. If you go past a certain time, you're in violation. So regardless, whether you
At 1 o'clock, I'll run them off. I'll say we're done.
Yeah, I think you make a concerted effort for midnight to be the cutting off point.
Absolutely.
And,
It costs me more money. I'm paying all my employees and I have over 20. So, it's a lot of money I have to pay out every week.
Commissioners,
We need to hear from the rest of the public, but
that was going to be my request.
thank you. Come on up to the microphone and state your name. Or Mr. Phillips, you going up?
Yeah, please. Can you hear me? I can't hear y'all if y'all ain't up to that microphone. Tim Murphy. I would like to tell y'all that I've been here, and I am Everett Phillip from District 4. And I stay on that man behind every time he has a race. You can ask him. Don't I get on him every time trying to keep everything going like it ought to? I know it's hard sometimes to make everything happen. It's just like if I was out there doing work with my bulldozer and I didn't like but 30 minutes being through, why should I quit? I mean, go ahead and finish the 30 minutes and be done with it, even if I'm violating the law. But now you're violating the law if you're out there with a noisemaker in the middle of the night. So therefore, I mean, I really understand that you're saying that this is a sporting event. It is to a certain extent for them spectators, but it's not for that man over there that's trying to make a living at it. That's a business for him. So you got to understand where he's coming from. And I've been around these races since 1967, every night, just about. And I know that it's really a pleasure to have 200 cars at a racetrack. I've been out on race with him. I know all about it. And he has too. Me and him used to race together. So I'm asking the board to make sure you eliminate something there so he can not have a fine every time he goes 5 minutes over 12 o'clock or whatever it may be. So, and I know y'all are common sense people, know every one of you. So please help the man out. I'm willing to help y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Anybody else? Anybody to speak for or against the noise ordinance?
My name is John Davidson, I'm from Lake City. And when I first pushed for this noise ordinance, it was specifically for the boom truck problems we were having in the county and down here in Lake City. And I don't know if this adequately addresses that problem. Maybe Joel can help me with this. What I'm seeing is the time starts at from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. is when it restricts the noise, the use of amplified sounds. Is that right?
In certain contexts, yes.
But what about the context of boom cars in particular?
Wouldn't the sheriff's Santa Rosa County address that?
See, I'm reading this right
Yeah,
here.
this is Florida statutes 316, 3.0, excuse me, 0.3.045.
Right?
It's 24/7.
Okay.
Not to
But
do that.
that's not
It's not addressed in that.
reflected in here.
It's not addressed in that ordinance at all because
Okay.
it's already state law.
Okay, 20. I'm sorry for the boom car. I can never keep, things always falling over on me.
So again, to repeat for the board and to help Mr. Davidson out here a little bit,
Yes.
in the process of working with law enforcement on this issue, this was identified as the way to enforce that problem. Because as we talked about, it's got to be a red-handed issue anyway. So by the time a citizen makes a complaint, and says, I got a boom car parked out here at the red light, they're gone before law enforcement ever shows up. So 316.3045, again, according to these procedures, is the mechanism that law enforcement uses to stop that. You could still complain, but you would complain in a law enforcement context.
Okay, now, can a citizen turn in a license plate number and have the sheriffs go after them?
It would be up to the sheriff how he'd want to deal with that.
Is there a sheriff's representative here that we can?
I don't think there's anybody
from.
I don't think there's anybody here who can speak for the sheriff.
Okay.
He's here to provide us with security. He's not here as a spokesperson.
All right, I'll have to talk to the sheriff about that. Now, number 2 is this ordinance looks like it covers everybody but Lake City. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So what are we going to do about the noise problem in Lake City?
We'll let the attorney answer that. I'll give you a layman's
here
term.
for
He'll
it.
give you the legal term.
Right.
So the City of Lake City is its own entity. Now, typically what the city will do when the county adopts an ordinance like this is follow suit. It's my understanding that's the city's intention to make it consistent. I think the police chief said that. So I think, I can't speak for the city, but I believe the city's waiting to see what the county does.
Okay.
So I don't think it's going to be for lack of action. I think it's just patience and waiting to see what the county decides to do and then make it consistent.
Okay. And one more thing here, and that the way this is written, any noise which is so harsh, prolonged, unnatural, or unusual in the time or place as to occasion unreasonable discomfort to any persons within the neighborhood from which the said noises emanate, which suggests that if there's a noise coming from the neighborhood next door, then you can't call and report them because you live in the other neighborhood. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir, but neighborhood's not the same thing as subdivision. I think you're thinking about subdivisions. Neighborhood means a residential community. And so if you're hearing it from the house behind you and that happens to be in a different subdivision, you're all still, in the same neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that would particularly apply to residential. Now, understand those are the general prohibitions.
Right.
And then you have to get into the details in terms of residential property to residential property versus commercial property to residential. There's all kinds of more details.
Right. I had read the whole thing. Now the big problem is, or the latest and greatest problem is the cutout exhaust systems on all these trucks. This has become almost as bad a problem as the damn boom cars that we had when I first pushed for this.
I'm sorry.
But this is a law enforcement issue, but there's already laws in existence to prosecute this, but law enforcement's not doing anything to knock it down. They're not doing a damn thing.
That's a matter for the sheriff. You talk to him.
Right, and maybe you guys can, tap on his shoulder, or I don't want to say what else, but, get him rolling on this, because this has become a major problem. This one,
I don't know, I've been there, done that. I don't know a young man or a young lady buy them a truck, they don't change the mufflers on.
I understand that.
When I was a youngster, I done it.
Right.
So it's one of those things that.
Right.
And I hear this, this is what I hear from on my side of the track. Well, you all want to create a ordinance to keep these young boys from the boom boxes, but you're not doing anything with these boys over here with the truck jacked up with the muffler change on it. So anything we do, it got cut both ways.
Absolutely.
That pendulum got to cut the same way, swing forward as it does when it come back.
Ticket both of them.
Yeah.
Ticket all of them. Right. Oh yeah, I don't dispute that, but it needs to be done. There needs to be tickets written. These guys need to be run down. They need to be stopped. If you got to impound their vehicles to stop that stuff, because it's a violation. And what 5 months ago, this wasn't a problem at all. And then all of a sudden, this thing became a craze like Beanie Babies or something. And everybody's got to cut the exhaust off their vehicles. And, now it's become a major pain in the butt. And
I get it. And through researching this ordinance, we did find out that there's a state law that addresses the stereo systems in cars.
Right.
And there has been a state law that addresses the exhaust systems in cars. But again, that is a complaint to the sheriff and the police chief. And I'll say it again, if y'all start calling and complaining, they'll start enforcing it. Because we have no jurisdiction over either one of those.
Right.
But I'm sure he'll get it.
I know people that have called about it, but how many, what is it, get a flood of calls? How much?
I don't know. Like I say, we have no jurisdiction.
Zooming right by the police department all day, every day, down to businesses. I've talked to business owners. They complain to me about it. They agree it's a problem. Maybe they're not calling in, but it's obviously a problem. And if this had been head off when this first started, it wouldn't have grown to the problem that it is now. There needs to be some kind of preemptive actions going on here.
Well, I will tell you, he's probably going to get feedback from this meeting. There's a reporter sitting right there typing anxiously right now. So it's probably, your concern's probably going to make the paper, and,
Well, we'll see what happens.
Maybe step one.
But I thank you for your time. I don't really have anything else to bitch about here. So I'll give you a break now.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll be back next time to bitch at you all.
Thank you, sir.
Get on top of this stuff, guys.
Have a good night. Call the sheriff.
Any other comment on noise ordinance?
Yeah, I have a complaint, but I agree with the racetrack. I support you.
Oh, yeah, we need your name.
Oh, hi, I'm Tyranny Cole, and I support you. And I agree with that man over there about the noise, because where I live is where a bunch of duplexes are, and the noise and the boom, 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 and it rattles my windows in my house and in my car, and it's just really bad. And I don't know what to do, and I won't call nobody about it because I don't want to start no ruckus in my neighborhood that I live in. I don't know what to do, so I just kind of put up with it. So, and I wish there was a suggestion of what to do, but I just wanted to let y'all know that I was in support of the racetrack, and I'm in support of that man over there, and I just wanted to back everybody up. And I want to thank you for listening to me. Have a nice day. I never done this before.
Thank you.
Thank you. You done fine.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Erin Mosley. I'm in Mr. Ron's district out in, please no pictures. My biggest thing is I'm out in that area because I personally like to be able to have my music. I personally don't think it's an issue. I live on a main road, but most of the places around me are not residential. So they're closed. The straight pipes, everybody has their own thing that they like to do. Some people like straight pipes, some people like loud music, some people like fireworks. I personally hate fireworks. As an Iraq veteran, they cause me a big issue. That's something that needs to be addressed also, because they don't just go off on 4th of July. They go off year round. And it's something that should be more, people should be more courteous about. I think if everybody was more courteous towards other people, there wouldn't be this issue.
Nope.
And as far as the music being loud on the highways, it is unconstitutional to tell somebody that they cannot have their music in their car. There was a man who was killed who was 17 in Jacksonville because of his loud music. Let's use our brains, people. There has to be another way. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to remind the public, this ordinance is not addressing loud pipes or loud music in cars because there is already state statute that does that. Anybody else? All right. I'll declare the hearing. There is already a state statute that covers audio system in vehicles. It was referenced earlier tonight. The sheriff is aware of it, which is why we did not include it in this ordinance, because there's already state law that addresses it.
We weren't aware of that either.
We found that fact out crafting this ordinance, so we were also.
I have one other question, Mr. Joel. I was looking on my notes.
Let's close the public hearing and then we'll get back into comments. How about that? All right, I now declare the public hearing closed. Commissioner Williams.
Mr. Joel, one other question I got on my notes here.
Yes, sir.
Living ag. From time to time, I feel like shooting my weapons.
Yes, sir.
How do that fall under a noise order?
This ordinance exempts shooting sports, outdoor hunting, hunting sports, the discharge of firearms in the normal course of legal hunting activities, or customary shooting sports such as skeet, trap, and target shooting. So if you're out discharging your firearm, I'll tell you right now, they took out the criminal penalties, ruled it unconstitutional, but it is still illegal for you guys to regulate firearms. So we are not regulating firearms through this ordinance, and that's why it's specifically exempted.
All right.
Commissioners, comments?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize to the paper and the public, it's our job to put the ordinance and these guidelines in place. But for the record, We are not the enforcers of this ordinance. It's up to law enforcement to carry it on from here on out. I mean, am I correct, Joel, to say that?
Yes, sir. If you'll recall the factual circumstances that the board's been dealing with, and the sheriff, in fairness, when a noise complaint comes in, what is he to enforce, right? So it's kind of been the breaking point that we've been at really since, other than you, Commissioner Williams, since all of you have been on the board, in my shared experience with you. So the idea of this, again, was to create the tool with the flexibility so that law enforcement can go out and, again, achieve compliance. This is not something that's intended to make money for the county. It's not something that's intended to be a revenue generator. It's something that will enable law enforcement to be responsive to the complaints that you guys are receiving.
And that's exactly the point I made in previous meetings, that, we got to develop something to give these officers some backbone to go out there and do their jobs. We're asking them to go out and do something, and they ain't got nothing to fall back on. So as we spoke with Chief Gilmore and the sheriff, we're going to give them some solid background here to work off of and let them carry it on. And we'll be supporting them, the way we do it.
And I did speak to the sheriff yesterday about this, I believe, and I'm not speaking for him, but he did work with you, Mr. Foreman, on this. He indicated, and he is in favor of this being crafted from a nuisance standpoint. And he said exactly what Commissioner Murphy said, that right now, and everybody focuses on the big things like the racetracks, but really the other complaints are that if somebody calls in a complaint and the deputy responds, and he walks in the house and you can hear the neighbor's TV in that person's house right now, all he can do is ask. With this, he can go say, hey, would you turn down? Now, they're not out there to write a fine first thing. Most people are going to say, hey, I'm sorry, I'll turn down, and it's going to be over with. You really have to be a jerk to keep pushing the issue to get a fine. You really do.
Yes,
I mean, so, and I wish we could rely on common sense and courtesy, but we can't, because we're getting complaints and they're getting complaints. So I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor of pulling the raceways out with the understanding that we're going to, put them both under the same agreement. The agreement we have would probably work for this racetrack too, but we'll have to work that out. And
may I make a suggestion, Mr.
Yes.
Chair? So we have the policies and procedures that govern the track on Racetrack Road. There's no reason there couldn't be a section 74-104.1 or something like that spells out noise regulations for racetracks. That would knock everything in the head at one time. And I could just work with the operators of both racetracks, look at that consent order with them. With that said, if that's something that's going to happen, I think the board might consider tabling the adoption of this ordinance until such time as those changes can be made.
okay, I also have concerns to Commissioner Williams' points. Could we actually spell out and exempt agriculture?
I already made the note, yes.
Okay.
Agriculture and livestock under the animal restriction.
So now when you make those two changes, this comes back to another public hearing?
We'll do another one of these. We'll do another adoption hearing.
And that will
I'll
be on the
republish-
16th, or will you have it ready for 16th?
If it can be ready by the 16th, I have to publish notice, of an adoption hearing, just like I did for this one. And so I'll have to have everything hashed out and ready to go before we publish that notice a week out. So I will give it every effort. I'm out of town next week, so I'll put every bit of effort into it I can to get it ready by then. If it can't happen, it could be first meeting of August.
Okay. All right, do you have a motion to table this?
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Nash. I got a second by Commissioner Williams. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Joel, you got your marching orders.
Chair, before we move on, just in relevance to the gentleman with the racetrack, are you familiar with this other agreement that the other? Okay, I'd like to ask if you would, y'all change, make sure you get your hands on that, because they need to have full, fair diligence to debate it, argue it, or whatever.
Yes, sir.
But yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Williams, second by Commissioner Ford. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
And likewise, I approve we adopt the consent agenda.
I think I've got a comment on the consent agenda by Mr. Lilker. Mr. Lilker, you still want, you don't want to do that? Okay. I've got a motion by Commissioner Williams.
Second.
I got a second by Commissioner Ford. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That motion carries. Mr. Foreman, you're up again.
Yes, sir. The first item I have for the board's consideration is a request to set an adoption hearing. It is time to renew the ad valorem exemption under Florida statutes 196.1995. That requires you to adopt an ordinance to place the referendum on the ballot. I would like to have that adoption hearing on July 16th.
Okay, board.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Williams.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Murphy. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That carries.
Mr. Chair, the next item I have is also a request for an adoption hearing, also to set a referendum for the November ballot. This relates to the Charter Review Commission's request to place a straw poll question on the ballot relating to consolidation of government services with the city of Lake City and Columbia County, non-binding straw ballot referendum. I'm requesting setting an adoption hearing for July 16th.
Okay, board.
Is that-
Motion by Commissioner Ford.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Nash. Discussion?
That total consolidation or just government service?
I'll read you the question. Would you support it? I believe it's total. Would you support a proposition on a future ballot to consolidate Lake City with Columbia County to form a city-county consolidated government?
Okay.
This is a non-binding opinion poll. That's the question that would appear on the
It's
ballot.
basically just a fill out for the county.
You guys are specifically authorized under Florida statute to ask these kind of questions to the electorate. And again, this is CRC's request.
Okay. Board? Oh, we've had it. Go call a question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
All right. Mr. Chair, I'm also requesting the setting of a special meeting for July 24th, 2020. The purpose of that meeting would only be to adopt the Charter Review Commission's approved ballot ordinances. The first public hearing was last night. One of the 5 initiatives was removed, so there's now 4 possible ballot questions. It is necessary, according to the charter and Florida law, for the board to adopt an ordinance to set a question on a ballot. Because of timing and the deadline set by the supervisor, I've got timing on the Charter Review Commission side and COVID-19, and then on the back side, I have the deadline set by the supervisor. So it's necessary for me to ask you to have a quick meeting on July 24th, 2020 to adopt those ordinances.
Okay, board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Nash, second by Commissioner Ford. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
We'll announce the time, Madam Clerk. I did make sure this building's available all day. If it's the pleasure of the board, we could do an afternoon meeting, because again, it's very limited purpose to adopt these ordinances that the CRC has approved. So
What time do you, 5:30 like to do?
I can do, it's a Friday, so whatever you want to do, I'm here at your pleasure.
Let's do one. I leave work early.
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Again, it's a very limited special meeting only for adoption of those ordinances.
1 o'clock?
1 o'clock.
Yes, sir. If that's the pleasure.
What's good for you, Stu? Okay. Stu says 1.
All right.
So we need a motion for that, or
I'm sorry?
do we need a motion?
I think she
We've
just wanted
had the motion.
for a posterity, the chair can set that. Yeah. The final request from Charter Review Commission is a request for a workshop. Charter Review submitted to the chair and Mr. Scott a series of findings and recommendations. These were not things that rose to the level of a charter amendment, but they were things that they wanted to share with the Board of County Commissioners in terms of their findings. They requested at their last meeting before the public hearings that the board set a public workshop to go through each of these items. And so I'm bringing that, requesting board direction.
Can we do both on the 24th?
If it's your pleasure, yes, sir.
How would this work? I mean, because my thoughts on the workshop are, we set up our normal meeting, a representative, maybe the chair from the Charter Review comes up, they're in the audience, they can come up and make individual comment, but I just don't want to have to go through, I mean, this room is pretty full when you set all them up. So a formal board meeting.
Oh, yeah, no. So
Okay.
yeah, they had actually, made they said, hey, we should have a joint board meeting. And I made the exact same point you did, Mr. Chair. That's a lot of people for a publicly noticed meeting of 2 bodies. There's no reason you guys can't have a workshop and they could attend. and participate in the discussion just like the public would.
I'm good with that. When we want to do that, the same day, 24th?
Why
Yeah,
don't
let's-
we,
let's
why
set it
do
for
we have
two.
to wait? Why do we do it the 24th? Why don't we wait later? When the virus is whatever,
You can do it whenever you like.
it's safer.
Yeah,
You think you want to do it? I mean, you want to do it on 24th or in
Oh, I
August?
don't know, whatever y'all want to do. Don't matter.
There is no deadline associated with these
Because
issues.
But I've got concerns on that because they've been working for how many months now? And I know they're ready to get wrapped up. So the
24th is
closer,
fine.
I will, they're technically convened through November 4th under law.
I get that, but they're technically done if we have this meeting on the 24th.
That's a very good point. Yes, sir.
I'd like to wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
It's
Go ahead.
your workshop to call, commissioners. Again, I'm just looking for direction.
We don't pay them.
If we
No,
do
you
2
don't.
o'clock, from 1 to 2, would that be enough to do the first meeting?
You could cross notice at 1 o'clock and just say as soon thereafter as can be heard, and then we'll set
Let's do
the
that.
workshop.
That'd be fine.
All right. We need a motion for that?
I was only asking for board direction. It would be better to have a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Nash,
Second.
second by Commissioner Ford. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes.
Am I finally done, Mr. Chair?
I think you are.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, commissioners.
Where's those racetrack people? I was gonna give them Ben Scott's number when they want to call at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I can't wait till Joel's brother calls him. He just built his big old mansion right across the street from the starting line at Oval.
Good evening, Commissioners. First item that I have for discussion, Mark Mushton is an attorney with Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson, and he contacted me. He's done several bond issuances for the county specifically in the past, and he contacted me and asked me if the county would accept doing a conduit revenue bond issuance for Belmont Academy Charter School. Of course, at that point, I had to ask him what he meant by that because I wasn't sure what that was. Basically, what it is in order for them to issue a tax-free debt, so the person that is issuing those bonds don't have to pay taxes on the interest that they earn, it has to come through a county commissioner office. And so, of course, the next question that I had to him was, well, what is that going to cost the county to do? So there is no cost to the county. What is the liability for the county? There is no liability for the county. If there is any cost to the county, such as if we need our county attorney to review the documents, then we can charge them back for that county attorney's time. I do have, basically what's in your package is just an application and a request for the board to consider this. They would like to, if the board is interested in proceeding with this, they would like to set a public hearing. They do have to hold a public hearing just like we would in order to issue these bonds, and they would like to set that in August. And Ritesh Patel with Neighbors Giblin is here to answer any questions that you might have.
So do we need to take action and set that public hearing, or do they need to set that? What are you asking the board to do tonight?
We would need to set that public hearing. We don't have to do it tonight, but because we would have time still to do it in the July meeting.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Scott. My name is Ritesh Patel. As Mr. Scott mentioned, I'm with Neighbors Giblin Nickerson, the county's bond counsel firm. To answer your question, Mr. Chairman, a notice would be published in the paper notifying the public of a public hearing on this bond issuance that's required under federal tax law. You would have a public hearing at that August 6th meeting for people to come speak for or against the project. You would also at that time have a resolution before you approving the bond issuance, approving the financing docs, approving the delegation to the chair and other folks to sign those documents. And then probably a week later, we would actually, the school would get the money. But if I can just back up, maybe give you a little more of an overview. I think Mr. Scott covered the meat of it. Basically, under Chapter 159 Florida statutes, the county can act as what's called a conduit bond issuer and issue conduit revenue bonds. So basically, all you're doing is you're issuing bonds on behalf of, in this case, the Belmont Charter School, which is a 501c3 non-for-profit organization, and it allows them to borrow money at a cheaper interest rate. at a tax exempt interest rate. So the lender who's buying these bonds from them can charge them a lower interest rate, and they get to build, expand their facility and refinance some existing debt at a lower cost. As Mr. Scott mentioned, there is no financial liability to the county. There is no ratings consequences to the county should the school not pay the debt. The debt is secured solely by the charter school revenues and also a mortgage on their property, a first lien mortgage on their property. The borrower would also execute an indemnity and expense agreement, holding the county harmless for any expenses and basically covering the county for any expenses, any liability, anything that would take place because of a default. And as Mr. Scott mentioned, any expenses in issuing the bonds, be it county attorney opinion, staff time, or anything, would be reimbursed by the school. And so you purely flow through on this kind of transaction, and there would be a loan agreement between y'all and the school, and those revenues from the loan agreement, which are secured by charter school revenues, would go to the lender and used to pay the debt. And as I mentioned previously, there would be a mortgage on the property that they could foreclose on if the debt was not paid. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions, and let me give you one quick background on just what they're trying to do. The schools would like to use these monies, and we're talking about $12.5 or $13 million, depending on a couple of things, to refinance some existing debt, which I believe is in around $3.1 million, and also issue some new money to finance an expansion of their existing school to accommodate 7th through 12th graders at a new building, and also add a second story to their existing building, and then also pay costs of doing the transaction. And that's what the funds would be used for. It'd be paid back over a 7-year term, and they have a lender lined up, an outfit out of Denver, Sunflower Financial, who specializes in charter school financing, and that's really the 1,000-foot level overview of it. But again, I'm happy to answer any questions, and we have representatives from the school if you've got any questions for them specifically on the school.
Mr. Chairman, when I talked to Ben and he assured me that there wasn't any liability or financial impact to the county, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I think it's
And
great.
Chair, also, this is a small gesture of a little bit of help we can give them. The Belmont Academy has done a superb job in the community. Hopefully we'll get that turn lane in for you guys here pretty quick down there on 47. Hopefully, cross our fingers, nothing happens. But the Belmont Academy is in my district. No doubt they've been an asset to the community, definitely the district. This is a very small price for us to come forward and help them with. Anything that we can do and keep us in mind in the future. And if there's anything else we can help you with, just let us know. We'll do what we can.
So basically, you're setting a public hearing for August the 6th.
Yeah, we would come back at the August 6th meeting for the, what's called a TEFRA hearing. That's required under the tax code. And also there'll be a resolution adopted by this board authorizing the issuance of the bonds, authorizing the execution of all the financing documents and everything else that goes along with that.
Okay.
And then the only thing I would add is thank you very much. And we appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay Poole, I'm one of the governing board directors. I won't say everything because it seems like you guys understand what we do as a school, and just want to thank you. We basically what we're doing is replacing modular buildings. Instead of paying somebody else, we want to pay it so we can own it. But we really appreciate the board's willingness to work with us and help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all.
So the next item that I have for your board is a memorandum of agreement with the state. The state Division of Emergency Management contacted our office and asked us if we would like to receive a generator. This is basically a trailer mounted generator that would be owned by the state, located in the county. Basically what we have to do is we maintain the generator, they buy the generator, and then we maintain it. And we're allowed to use it for anything that we need to use it for during emergency situations. If if we are not under a state of emergency and another county is under a state of emergency, we may have to deliver that generator to them. That's the only catch to agreeing to this. So we as staff are recommending approving the memorandum of agreement between the county and the Division of Emergency Management.
Okay, board?
So move.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Nash, second by Commissioner Ford. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
The next item that we have is a budget amendment. Basically, the state came out with some COVID relief money. This money can only be utilized at the 911 center. It would be used to clean. We've already cleaned the center a couple times. Clean the center and any supplies, PPE or anything that they may need at the 911 center, specifically reserved for the 911 center. So we're asking the board to approve BA 20-48 in the amount of $24,000.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Williams, second by Commissioner Murphy. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
The next item that we have is to add Manning Court and Cider Terrace to our Jacksonville Loop project. When staff were looking at these two roads that have issues with them, it just made sense that we should have included these two roads. One of them is a dirt road that there's no other dirt roads around it. We can go ahead and pave this road while we're doing Jacksonville Loop. The other one is a paved road that is just totally falling apart. And so what we decided is to come ask you before we put it out to bid to go ahead and include these two roads in Jacksonville Loop. We're thinking we can probably get it done for what we have budgeted. Our estimate for those two roads is $38,840. So we're asking to approve the addition of Northeast Manning Court and Northeast Cider Terrace to the Jacksonville Loop project.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner
Second.
Williams,
Second.
second by Commissioner Ford. I can speak to the Manning Court because that's in my district and it is, I don't even know if you can consider it a paved road anymore. It's so bad.
And this is kind of an odd project because it goes into two districts. Part of it's in Commissioner Williams' district, part of it's in your district. Yes, sir.
We'll make some people happy. All right,
Gotcha.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
The next item that we have is leachate planning scope of services for Jones Edmonds. I do want to clarify. I think I might have misspoke when I told Commissioner earlier, this is for the design. This is not for the complete design. So in order for, we told you during the budget workshops, we have a problem with leachate. And there's multiple options that we need to look at before we know for sure that building those tanks is the right thing to do. And so we've asked Jones Edmonds to look at all the options, whether it's continuing to haul, whether it's building something on site, or whether it's the tanks that we talked about before. Once they get finished with this, they'll have a recommendation for us. And if it is to do the design, or to do the tanks, we'll have about 30% of the design work done. So this isn't for the complete design, but it is for us to look at all the options, the financial cost of building the tanks versus financial cost of continuing to haul. And that cost is $75,000. So we're asking for us to approve Jones Edmonds for leachate planning scope of services in the amount of $75,000.
Board.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Williams.
I second this. I think this is very important that we get this done. Leachate's gonna be very expensive to the county if we don't get something done with this project.
Okay. Second by Commissioner Ford. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
Commissioners, we just, for your point of reference, we did have a meeting with the city today and we discussed several issues. Leachate was one of the issues. And they are a little concerned about it. And so we are going to be including city staff in this study so they'll see what's going on the whole time. The next item that I have is a grant application for County Road 240. If you'll recall, we presented the board with a safety program that DOT had in place a few months ago. And they came back with some recommendations to us on some safety improvements. Well, there's some funding available for these safety improvements. And so what we're recommending is that we go for the County Road 240 corridor safety project. Mostly what this does on County Road 240 is a lot of signage on curves and things of that nature. It also creates 2 4-way stops at Old Wire and Tustanoogie. It also realigns 247 and 240. This is all grant funded. What we're asking for is to apply for this safety grant with DOT on County Road 240 in the amount of $658,549.
Board.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Murphy,
Second,
second by Commissioner Ford. Discussion.
I just want to add that that's a very dangerous intersection at 247 and 240. And this addresses that somewhat. And I think it'll be a major improvement to what they have there now.
And I agree.
All right. Any more discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
First addition that we had is Cedar Spring Shore surplus lots. As you'll recall, a few months back, we surplus several lots in the county. And Commissioner Murphy asked us to hold off on one lot that's there at Columbia City Elementary. And Commissioner Ford asked us to hold off on these lots that are located in Cedar Spring Shores. We were approached by a citizens group in Cedar Spring Shores. They wanted to form an organization to take over the lots and to maintain the lots. And Commissioner Ford has had meetings with them, and so I'll let him speak to the discussions he's had with the citizens.
Yeah, on May 31st, I had a meeting with about 60 of the residents in Cedar Spring Shore subdivision. I think the majority of the residents, or I know the majority of the residents are for this. The lots were intentionally meant for the residents of Cedar Spring Shore subdivision to have a local park for everyone in the subdivision, basically to have river access, because some of the lots in that subdivision are not on the river. And I'd like to make a motion that we give these lots to the nonprofit at Cedar Spring Shores for their use.
So they are, Rocky, a nonprofit organization?
It is a nonprofit organization.
Commissioner, I think that what we would end up doing is we would ask, the motion I think would be to have Joel draft the paperwork to do that. And it would come back to the board for that final approval.
Yeah, just, I received a letter from Mr. Hans, Mr. Ruiz, and a couple of the other neighbors out there, and they're part of a group that's kind of, I think you know Commissioner Ford, they're pushing back on some of this. And I've responded to them, and I can provide the letter if you'd like. I think I copied you on it. So where we're getting a little bit sideways with some of these folks is it is a public park as it exists right now. And there's a contention by some people down there, you can't vacate a public park. We absolutely can. The only requirement is there has to be an application by the fee title owner to vacate the park. Well, right now that's the county. So the county could apply to vacate the park. The Board of County Commissioners would decide at a public hearing whether or not to vacate the park. At that point, it would be unencumbered by the plat where it says park. I think that's a step that the board would need to take. The other thing that the board needs to make sure of is the letter I've seen says that they're planning to form the entity and all that kind of stuff. We need to verify their 501c3 status, who their membership is, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms
we have a
of-
letter for that to show that they have formed.
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah.
But in terms of whether the board has the power to do it, you do have the power to do it. And that was a big point of contention. But I think in terms of going through the steps in the process to lift the park off of that land, to get it in position to be transferred, and then you can use your discretion in terms of how you make disposition of that property. But I would again recommend it only be to a nonprofit and with a reverter that says if it ever ceases to be used for the benefit of the subdivision, it comes back to the county.
So in light of the first step, should the motion tonight be to set a public hearing to vacate the park?
You can ask me to move forward with that process and I'll prepare the application.
Got a question, Mr. Chair. Is it access to the river now from that park?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. People go down. I don't know if you've seen the aerials of the park, but one of the neighboring property owners has actually been using it as his driveway forever.
All right. Here's my concern. If it's a public park and people use that to get access to the river now, once it become private, then that cut the public out to be access to the property.
I think Commissioner
Commissioner Williams, the county has not maintained this park or had it open to the public for several years. Matter of fact, we didn't even know we had a park down there till somebody built a dock on this property, and we got a letter from Swanee River Water Management that we had an illegal dock on our property in Cedar Spring Shores. That's when we found out we even had property down there. Now, I'm talking to Clint Clint was aware of the property, but it had been closed for several years. I don't know how many years, 15, 20 years it's been closed. So to your question, no one is using the park right now, but a few residents that knew about it when they bought the property down there, that in the 73, I believe is the year, some of them, when they bought the property, they were told that park was there for their use. So that a few of them have been using it, but the county hasn't maintained that property. I don't know how many years, 15, 20 years. So to your answer, the citizens of Columbia County right now are not using that as a park.
And also on that parcel of property, isn't there structure built on it? I mean, isn't that guy's porch on one side of it or something?
There is some steps that's coming down right on the property line, or maybe a couple feet across the property line. It's hard to determine exactly. But, and one of the neighbors next door has a driveway going across it. But, you know, that's something that can be addressed with the corporation once they acquire the property.
Take ownership.
And it is an unimproved lot. The county's never done anything down there. There's actually 3 lots involved. One which has riverfront access, and 2 that are across the way across the street from that lot. And I think their idea is to kind of make themselves a little parking area in the 2 lots to where they can just go across and access the river from the one.
Yeah, the lots are wooded lots right now. They're basically just wooded lots.
Okay, board.
I'll make a motion that we direct Joel to set a public hearing to vacate the lots. Or
Second.
vacate the park.
Motion by Commissioner Ford, second by Commissioner Murphy. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. That carries.
The last item that I have for you tonight, Commissioners, today during our, I'm sorry, I had to skip one. Yeah, that's right. We have a resolution authorizing the county manager to sign the CARES Act funding agreement. As you've been made aware through emails, there are some CARES Act funding that's going to be coming through to the county. And this resolution allows me to sign the agreement for that so that we don't have to come back at another meeting and ask for that.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Ben, at some point, could we be briefed maybe at a future meeting on all the COVID funding and what we're using it for? I mean, I know there's several things that can be used for it. You know, we can use it for business relief, some of it.
Commissioner, what the plan is, David and I have been looking at what some of these other counties have done. And I put together a little matrix the other day. And yes, we need to have a workshop to determine exactly how we're going to spend that money. But we're trying to look at, the state has told us in a couple of these conference calls that they're working on some guidelines. And so we'd like to have those guidelines put there so we can bring it back to you. And David said in a conference that I couldn't make it. And what they did was they kind of took one county, I don't remember the county, they put what they used for guidelines, because basically what happened is they sent this money out and said they had very broad strokes. And when they put this out there, they said, here's what you can use it for. And oh, by the way, if you don't spend it right, you're going to pay it all back to us.
And that's my concern.
Right.
And that's the reason we're trying to take it a little bit slow to make sure that what we present to you guys. Now, the expenses that the county has incurred, direct expenses, those are no brainers. But the other relief, the economic relief for businesses or citizens, that's the part that we really want to make sure that we got sewed down what the rules are going to be.
So we will have a workshop on that in the future.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's my recommendation. Yes.
And Ben, approximately when are we going to be having this workshop? I mean, sooner or later, it seems like it's a necessity. I mean, because I was contacted today by the school system, you know, and the problem that we got out of Columbia City, bringing the kids to school, this, that, and other. But now, Department of Education is changing their whole format, how a mama and a daddy drops a kid off and picks a kid up.
Okay.
Well, mom and daddies ain't getting out of cars, so creating, you know the issue we're having there. And it seems as though that to me that this could be a COVID qualification of expenditures, but that's Tim Murphy's thought. But
That's a big word you just said, boy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Are we talking about, well, we can get into a little bit more.
Yeah, but I just
think
wanted-
We need to get more information
Yeah.
before we get to.
Yeah,
that.
get into
Yeah, that's
that.
not good. We're getting too far in the weeds.
Okay.
All right,
Do we have a vote
I
on that?
make the motion to give Ben the authority to go and sign the contract
Second.
with the
I think
carriers.
we already had a motion and a
We need
second.
a
Did we?
I
Oh,
was
okay.
lost. It was me. We had a motion and a vote. All
Call
right.
the question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Okay. The last item that I have, today during our meeting with the city, they let us know that they've applied for 2 river grants with Swanee River Water Management. And so I volunteered to draft an email in support of those 2 grants. Basically, there's two phases. One of them is to take the RV part and put it onto the sewer system. And the other part is to expand into neighborhoods that would like to have their septic tanks removed to replace septic tanks. I believe all in all, they could take 311 septic tanks off of and put them onto the sewer system down there. So basically,
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I always go, session for 1 year, just to do discussion about tax relief. We discussed over the agenda, and I'd like to.
what the closure is going to be.
Great.
I think it's fitting. You know, we did discuss tax relief in the budget process. The feds have done it. The state's done it. It's only fitting that the county does it. You know, this is better than a millage reduction in the sense that it benefits all our residents and not just our property owners who pay taxes. So I'm in favor of this.
You know, right now we are faced with the worst pandemic of our lifetime. Several people's been without work. Several businesses have been closed. I know this probably is not the best time for us to try to do something like this with our budget, but it's the right thing to do right now. I mean, we need to try to help our people out in this county any way we can at this time, and it's the best way we could figure, or I could figure, to help the citizens out. It affects every homeowner in the county. It's going to save them about $200 a year, and I think they deserve it at this time with what everyone's been through.
I agree. I think with this and the CARES money, I think we can make a good impact for the community.
And with the, with the impact that the ad valorem does, I mean, this is the only way to go. This is more, more dollars in the constituent's pocket. And I think it's the right thing to do at the right time. And this is the pandemic that drove it to this point. So it's our job to step up and do what we're supposed to do as legislators.
Can I have a motion?
You have a motion.
Second.
I got a motion by Commissioner Nash. I got a second by Commissioner Murphy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
I just want, the motion was to set the garbage assessment at 0, right?
Zero.
Yes.
Correct.
And the reason why, when
Why
you make
we're-
that, and the reason why we are doing it. I mean, he did the motion, but when you bring it back to the board, you can say the board, this is the reason this board voted to do this for this reason.
Anything else?
Uh,
Didn't we have one more? Do we have one more?
Yeah, well, I was gonna add that on if I could. I got with, Manager, Scott in relevance to what Mr. Nash just brought to the floor here. Of course, we need to show support for the other local entities. So I've got a letter here I asked Ben to draft up. I think he, might have had some discussion with, Mr. Ford, but I think they've done a real good job, and if, just for the record, I'll read it real quick, but it's to the Lakeshore Hospital Authority, Chairman Bill. Columbia County Board of Commissioners would like to offer, good God, ain't that many people in here. Columbia County Board of Commissioners would like to offer their appreciation to the Lakeshore Hospital Authority Board of Trustees and their staff, as well as other taxing authorities for their efforts in working to keep Columbia County an outstanding community. As I am sure you will agree, the events of the past few months resulting from the COVID-19 has been unprecedented in our nation, our state, and our county. The impact to our citizens and local businesses has been as difficult as we have witnessed in most of our lifetimes. Due to the unprecedented impacts of COVID-19, the Columbia County Board of County Commissioners is pledging to do everything within its power to give local property owners as much tax assessment relief as possible for the next fiscal year, October 1, 2020, September 30, 2021. We're reaching out to all taxing authorities and asking that they do the same. We realize that there are many problems and issues for every taxing authority, including our own. Nonetheless, we believe the immediate needs are overshadowed by the pain and suffering experienced by many. Please accept this letter in the spirit as it is written. Together, all taxing authorities united can make a difference in the community which we live, work, and play. Best wishes in the upcoming year. Sincerely, Mr. Toby Witt. I guess you should have read that, but you've been kind of stuttering tonight. But I had a conversation with a couple, with the director over there, and I'd just like to say, Mr. Williams kind of put this, Mr. Dale Williams, ex-county manager, when he brought this to the table a couple months ago to his board, I'd just like to say publicly thank you to him for putting that thought out there, because this is a much needed activity, and I support it 100%.
Okay. Do we need a motion to send that to them? Or he just read it into our minutes? What's your action you want there, Commissioner Murphy?
I'll make a motion to send forth this letter of support and recommendation to the Lakeshore Hospital Authority for them to take and do with it as they see fit.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Murphy, second by Commissioner Nash. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I want to clarify my motion on when I was talking about the posting of the things. I asked for Joel and Brandon to get together. Also, I asked for it to go back, the 3-hour thing that we heard last time, to go back to the Board of Adjustments for them to make a determination on whether it was posted properly, not to come back to the Board of County Commissioners.
I'm gonna second that.
That was that Ron quoted me as that was my motion.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that. And I'm gonna say, I've had several people reached out to me this past week that live on that road that says they have not seen a sign on that road. I'm pretty much convinced the sign was placed on the wrong property. And I appreciate Mr. Nash making this motion tonight
like I say, it is in my district. It is my constituents involved. And I think they should have a chance to have their voice heard at a public meeting.
At the Board of Adjustment.
At Board of Justice.
Mr. Foreman, legally, what are we doing here?
You're revisiting the appeal that you all voted to deny last time. It's over. The ship is
That's
sailed.
what I thought.
It's over.
We are revisiting the appeal that we've already voted to deny. It's over. We can't do it.
You can't remand it back to the Board of Adjustment. They denied the appeal. What's being requested is basically a judge saying, hey, I pulled my opinion. I want to rewrite it. We don't have a procedure for that. Now, we can ask the Board of Adjustment to explain why they thought it was published, but you can't reopen the appeal. You voted on it.
Okay. We'll ask them to do that, please.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but you know, the
Well,
question.
to me, it was never really clarified when I stated it early. Through all that stuff, it was never determined whether it was publicly noticed properly or not.
Okay.
Well, you get your 2 minutes. Okay.
Now, we do need to, the clerk is waving her hands. What motion did you have recorded?
I don't have anything. I have a motion by Mr. Wilson for Mr. Foreman to work with Mr. Stubbs and IT and to draft an ordinance to provide better notice to neighboring properties and find a way to use the website to provide notice.
And that's what I had.
That was a motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And look, I don't want to, if Mr. Nash wants to make another motion to do something else, I think we just need to have a separate vote on that because the clerk doesn't have the motion with that addition to it.
Well, then I'll make that motion I just stated, but you said it's illegal.
Well, I can't stop you from making a motion. You make the motion. If the board wants to go down, we can talk to the Board of Adjustment, but I'm saying procedurally, there's no mechanism to reopen that appeal.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I would like for the Board of Adjustments to determine whether the property was properly noticed where the tower is going. We never determined that.
Got a motion by Commissioner Nash. Second by Commissioner Ford. Come on up, Stu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Nash, for those sentiments. I'm trying to understand what's going on here. The debate at the last county commission meeting, when you were acting as the quasi-judicial body, was cut off. Not everybody had a chance to speak. And Mr. Nash didn't say a word. That was cut off. I never saw that before. The chairman called the question. So what I'm understanding this board to do is making a motion to reconsider, which you can do. You can't do it. And the only person that can do that is the person on the other side. Rocky was the only one that voted against it. So the only thing that Mr. Nash can do now is to make a motion to reconsider, besides sending everything back, which clearly there needs to be something done about the notice in the county. But in order to preclude lawsuits, in order to enable people that clearly did not see any sign and testify to that effect, what needs to be done tonight is a motion for reconsideration. Only 4 people can make that tonight. Mr. Nash and the 3 other commissioners other than Mr. Ford. If Mr. Nash makes that motion and there's a second, you can vote to kick that back to the Board of Adjustment and ask them to rehear it. And if Mr. Foreman doesn't like that, that's too bad for Mr. Foreman. But this board can do that because there's nothing in the rules that says you can't make a motion for reconsideration on anything. And I researched that, and if Mr. Foreman has the law, I'd like to see it with my own 2 eyeballs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lilker. Mr. Foreman, can you come clarify that?
Yeah, I can. Quasi-judicial hearings have 2 sides. The other side's not here. That's why you can't do it. It's a due process issue. Mr. Lilker, it's a due process issue. Mr. Chair, point of order.
Okay. I have no comments. Do you have a comment?
I'm not a lawyer.
That's my comment. I don't know if it's legal or not.
All I know is when we go to Orlando and everywhere we go, they always tell us that we cannot go wrong by listening to the advice of the attorney. And I say we can't do it, and I'm not an attorney.
Well, I mean, I agree.
Because their due process have to be done. You don't have the other side here.
I mean, I agree with Ron. We have to listen to our county attorney. I mean, but, you know, I'm sure there's gonna be retribution if he's not correct.
I get it. We had a planning and zoning board decide the issue and we had an appeal and we decided to go with our planning and zoning board after hearing testimony from two parties. We don't have that now. And we heard lengthy testimony from two parties. And, you know, we weren't even supposed to allow witnesses that night, but we allowed witnesses that night. Well, it was a testimony between two parties. We gave a lot of leeway that night. I don't want to do that again, but we gave a lot of leeway that night. We heard extensive testimony and we decided the question. And I agree with the attorney. It's done.
Well, do you want to have a vote on it just in case they can work something out?
I
I
don't.
mean, if there's a vote and it don't get passed, it don't matter anyway.
I don't see how you have a vote when you're denying the other side his due process because he's not here.
You can't do it.
Well, if you set another hearing, you will allow him to have it.
You're going to get sued either way.
Madam Clerk, do you have a pending motion?
Yes, I do.
What is it again?
That's for the board of adjustments to determine whether there's a property owner.
You have to dispose of that, Mr. Chair.
I need to dispose of that motion, but he made the
You gotta get a
motion.
vote either way.
Oh, okay. Let's, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
So we'll refer that issue to the Board of Adjustment.
If to me, that motion says he wants the question answered as a commissioner, he's well within his rights to get the question answered. That's all we just voted on.
And
Answer
that's
the
my
question.
point, Mr. Chair. We can take care of that for sure. Thank you.
All right. Any comments on anything else? Commissioners? Staff, you got any comments? All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry. We still got public comment. I'm sorry. It's been a long night. Do we have any 2-minute public comments?
Todd Sampson, I wanted to come back. You guys helped us with the Lake City Humane Society recently, and I wanted to. Todd Sampson.
Running for city council.
Yeah, that did. I wanted to thank you guys. I don't know if you've been by our site. It looks outstanding. County staff's done an excellent job. We have ordered the building in about 8 weeks. It should be in the erection process, hopefully, and I just wanted to thank you guys for that.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
There's been not a lot of talk, but there's been some talk about the situation where Lake Shore Hospital is. And we need for Dale or the board or something to sort of kind of keep us up with what's going on with the Lake Shore Hospital. Because if they get out, if Shands get out of that contract, why would you need a hospital authority? I mean, there's a lot of ramifications that fall on this board when it comes to indigent care.
Commissioner.
So we need to be kept in that loop.
Commissioner, I can tell you that I spoke to Mr. Williams at lunch today. I can tell you they do have some options that they're working on. And the reason he has not came to us yet is because they don't know the outcome of those options. And he wants to have all his information before he comes back to us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That addresses my concern right there.
All right, now, public comment. Nobody wants.
Motion we adjourn.
All right, I move we adjourn. Let's go.
Didn't do a comment?